many people have actually lost their dream, because if it's not paired right with the spiritual components that give you the what, when, why, where, and how all this is going to be possible. Because the times that we're in, seek to even erase a lot of those visions and not even allow a passageway to the activation of something like that, because real knowing of our spiritual faculties, our design, those things are so fundamental to activating true power, true energy.
So it is. Happy New Now. Welcome to this moment. I'm going to go ahead and just say that I'm honored to welcome this visionary brother. He's an inventor. He's a pioneer. What can we say about this man, really? His name is Seven Bomar, and he's the founder of Secret Energy, the University, the CEO of Spiritech Inc., where he's birthed world-first innovations such as Phi Aqua, Sybil AI. And if you don't know what those things are yet, you're about to, and we're gonna share some resources with you. But I just want to say that Seven's work bridges so many realms together that I feel in the Band of Light, and for all of those of you who have been following along, you likely already know of his frequency. Even if you haven't consciously tuned into it, it's felt in the space, because he's been architecting and building and really just doing the silent work of the pillars of our times. And I just want to give thanks for your presence here today. It's with great respect, great excitement that I welcome to the Band of Light my friend and my brother, Seven. Welcome.
Yes. Wow. That's an introduction for these times. That's going to be held close to my heart and remembered. Thank you so much for inviting me here. This is a long time coming. Have lots of history together. And, I just honor, of course, you thinking of me, bringing me into the space and allowing me to be a part of this next level of this journey that, you're on at this stage. So wholeness.
Wholeness. It is truly, you're such a mirror in many ways. We were just speaking a moment ago how it's almost like the lions were like seeds. And I say lions as just one way to put us. What do we call it? Just similar, like-minded souls who have a lot of energy, power. Some of it's dormant, and you look across the world, you could call them angels too, just architects who are coming here with a sensation that I'm not here to fit in. I'm here to somehow make this place better. I'm here to somehow contribute something to upgrade this realm and contribute to it in a good way. But it seems like as seeds, we've been kind of spread out across the realm, and we don't always get to hang out too often.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's
like we know of each other, but it's like, oh man,
yeah.
When are we gonna actually get to do this thing? So I appreciate you for showing up. I had to wear my special watch just out of respect.
Ooh, okay, I see you.
See what time it is. And I just would love to start, brother, by just opening the space for you to just give us a little bit of almost like a state of the union, how, as you scope the reality right now, what are you tracking? What's at the front edge of your awareness right now? And I just love to start there rather than going into specifics. Just give me a sense of, where you're at, what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna lead us into a lot of things. So that's an awesome way to get started. Yeah. And wow, I think maybe some introductions would be due, just because, I can't say that I'm Tom Cruise at this point, where everybody's Tom, you know what I mean? It's, I've been definitely funning underground and pioneering some very powerful stuff. I'm very equipped, very determined. But in that way, I think you have more time to do things inside of the laboratory, inside of your mind, inside of, your architectural digest, if you may, than you have to just kind of broadcast, right? Because the real denominator is time.
Yes.
And, I try to push a 16 out of a day, sleep about 5 of those, and then be back around again. You know, if I don't have that early morning, I can get more done in that early morning than most of the day. It's almost like once the sun comes up, it's just a different vibe, frequency. You know, energy is high. You know, I kind of get into all the things that I am responsible for, the maintenance, as I love to call it. But those early mornings and just dialing into that vibe, that frequency is just, you know, the dynamic that I'm often in. I try to keep really that going on through the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with that being said, as introduction, if I could summarize really what I'm about, I can say that there was a very strong vision being projected in the 80s. You know, I was born in 1978, so you got the 80s and the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we were designed, the things that were told to us that were going to happen, and what we could even do, the level of nostalgia, you know, we even almost invented that during those times that was created then. It really became something that I saw was not going to happen unless I tapped into something that was beyond what had been even told to me was possible.
Mm.
And when those two things came head to head, my life put me into situations where it allowed me to see that beyond exist clearly, in an undeniable, undoubting way. So in my 20s, I had reached like a full activation towards my late 20s. And in that way, it brought me around to be able to harness the potential of being in the generation that was the first to really see the computers get here.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were still, you know, I've tapped a rotary phone. I'm 46 right now, so 1978. So I've tapped a rotary phone before, you know,
Yeah.
pagers. You know, we never thought that we would be able to carry a video signal to another person in real time and that would hold, you know, because of the ball rate and all that. So we saw dial up, we saw America Online, we saw Prodigy.
Mm.
And so in many ways, we're kind of like in this Goldilocks zone because even now AI is here. So we went all the way through the whole process of seeing every single aspect.
Mm.
And in that way, spirituality became really the thing that, you know, advanced metaphysics became the thing that pairs very well with the ideals of what we believe. And I think that that's why many people have actually lost their dream, if you may, because if it's not paired right with the spiritual components that give you the what, when, why, where, and how all this is going to be possible, it could seem rather fanciful in the times that we're in. Because the times that we're in, you know, seek to even erase a lot of those visions, those dreams. That's not realistic. And not even allow passageway to the activation of something like that. Because again, the real knowing of our spiritual faculties, our design, you know, our history, our herstory, our culture, the power here, the monuments, the relics, etc. Those things are so fundamental to activating true power, true energy. So if I can say again, who I am is being that is aware of that and has moved strategically through existence to keep checking those boxes of things that are necessary to completely unlock, you know, if you want to call it a matrix,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and to really do that, not on just a conversational level, but to bring those innovations, to do that research, to bring that truth here. Because once you already know, okay, well, it does exist, you know, now the work that lays before us is being able to exhibit that to our brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's what embodies Seven Bomar. And in these times, because you know we've been in this, and actually that's actually a good time. Probably throw some glasses on here.
Hey, let's go.
I don't agitate everybody here, but after 16 years under the lights, you know, I have to have a band. They call it a Ray Ban. You know, it's like there's a blue light, like melatonin. You know, all those things are important. So I'll just throw these on real quick.
You know,
I just felt
right,
that was like a
right
perfect.
before we hopped on, I was looking around in every every little cubby hole for my blue light shades today because I was feeling the same thing today,
Yeah.
noticing I was up pretty late in the studio last night. Some of my eyes already got a little bit of, crust from last night, and I've been noticing that recently. I'd love to actually bookmark that for another moment in the conversation, just to speak about the blue light, to speak about
Oh
some of the
yeah.
technologies and the effects
Because
they're having on the bioluminescent bodies, and what that's doing. But anyway, I just want you to continue your State of the Union for a minute before I butt in too much.
yeah, oh, no worries. I mean, this is all part of it because, honestly, that was the whole vision always is that if I could always be who I am and not load any characters
Yes,
when I'm coming forward, then you would get the best of me.
that's right.
Like I have sometimes conversations with my friends that I'm like, man, that's transformational. That's life changing.
Mm,
So when the cameras come on, that needs to be there.
that's it.
But that's like a train that starts running,
Yeah.
right? And it doesn't start right away. But if we know that we're headed in that direction, then we eventually get there and we can play with it a little bit. Like, even just throwing on the shades real quick, it's like there's some practical sides to all of it, right? And everybody says it all the time. It's like, yeah, the blue light, we need to protect ourselves. It's nighttime, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I really have to practice that because I've seen the dark side of it. Like 16 years under the lights, I have over perfect vision. I still do. I can read the bottom of the line on that eye chart, but that also means that I'm super sensitive to Kelvin
Yes.
levels. You see what I mean? And so I study light.
Mm.
And I even realized I had these lights in my theater and they were like really nice, but they weren't designed properly for my vision. And I was getting these headaches and I didn't know where the headaches were really coming from, right? And that kind of debilitated a bit of my performance. So now, I like to fully optimize my existence and stay in step.
Yes.
See what I mean? Like I can't regress. I got to come even stronger. Like we're from a world of 6 hour, 7 hour shows. I know as a DJ, you go all night, right? So, in that, I definitely make my adjustments. And, so get back to or forward to what we were saying is that, so I came in this with a vision like a child after watching Goonies. You know what I mean? I saw Myst, games like Myst, and all of these different. It's a vibe. It's an aesthetic to itself in itself. The first Tron, all this kind of stuff.
It's nostalgia.
Yeah, and I believed that this was the future that we were going to live in, and I was kind of designed to pioneer parts of that future, like a Steve Jobs would be. Like even in the areas like Big Sur and Chula Vista and Vista and Oceanside and all these areas, this is all a nucleus of a vibe of something that's happening. And so I believe, again, in many ways that those who have that kind of vision and had that kind of archetype, if you may, that they were designed to do something, and that something is right now.
Yes.
Because these times take for you to be innovative, even familiar with the technologies, not scared of the technologies, spiritual. That's why we call the company Spirit Tech, but not just like religious spiritual, but like fully immersed shamanistic spiritual. It needs you to have to attain the level of the true mastery of balance, right? To really know, hey, this is a physical and this is a spiritual, and that's a marriage. Yeah. Physical and the spirit, these are the two opposites, and they're in a marriage. You don't get power, just like on a battery, you don't get power until you put two opposites together. That's so right. We live in what you could consider as the friction. And when you learn how to adapt to that and harness the potential of that, because that's where purpose comes in at. Other than that, everything is unified. Right? So the challenges before us, they equate to the kid, if you may, that was built like the ones in the 90s. You see what I mean? And from my perspective. You know what I mean? I think everybody should do this for your generation. Like, yo, the future is built for someone like me, as multidimensional as I am. But that then takes, of course, to break the mold. So you're dealing with beings who have broken the mold. We've seen in and outside the matrix. We've come back in. That's not really a choice unless you want to divide or die. You know, you're going to come back just like you wake up in the morning, you're going to come back. Many people have been on some fantastic journeys or had some fantastic dreams and then woke up.
Right.
And you got to get used to that as a phenomena. Like I'm a super powerful being in one space, and here I'm Clark Kent.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I got glasses. You know what I mean? And so that's what it is. And so, you know, those are the kind of lessons that I've been, you know, internally learning, that I've been growing on. Even when we did even things like the DMT trials, where we went over 100 journeys of DMT on the clinical level and just kind of logging the code that we're seeing and everything, and kind of mapping where these Joker kaleidoscope kind of things coming from, and what are these plants looking like, and what do these crystals really do. You know, so even in those processes, you go on these fantastic adventures with all there is. And then you'd still be on the bus the next day, like, and the guy next to you has no clue. And so even the notion that you would know if the one is here, you would feel it, you would have to be attracted to it and it yourself for that to be quite apparent, right? So I do my best as I can to activate as many, we're kind of like an organic internet, you know, as many hotspots as possible. And just like you said, we don't have a lot of time to be together. Just, you know, in planting, we do a lot of that these days. You don't plant big trees next to each other. You see, because when they grow, they cover entire spaces. So it's good that we're now cross-pollinating, though. These flowers do need to be germinating.
Yes.
And, you know, and that's what we're really in. So I even think that that scope in itself is kind of like a good introduction, because I kind of gave some ramifications of how I see things from more of a multidisciplinary, multidimensional perspective. So that way, if I'm hitting something, let's say head on, and I can't really determine what it is in that state, I'll go from the side, I'll go from the back, and, you know, get a kind of a 360 as much as possible, or get a cloud going until I start seeing the common denominators that are still resplendent within everything at its most basic level, right? So being able to tear it all down and then build it back up.
That's right.
That way we can get some full understanding.
Very well said. And that is a beautiful state of the union, just kind of scoping the moment. And I appreciate the way that you spoke to, you know, you don't plant big trees next to each other. And yet at the same time, those roots gotta, you know, grow big enough, and the, you know, the little pollen's got to go spread, and we have to share information and actually go like, yo, how's it going over there? And you know, how are you transmuting sunlight and, you know, still nourishing with this force happening? And man, they got the aluminum and the barium and the strontium on lockdown right now. Like, how are you doing with that? Right. You know, like, how you growing through these times? So I just,
for sure,
that we can be here to, you know, share some codes. And so I would love to know, just in the, you know, in the, I guess when I scope the situation on the planet, I notice there's a part of my mind, especially now that I'm a father, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, that there's a guardianship that comes online with when you're a father, when you're a mother, when you're a parent. You come out of the visionary and the hypothetical into a very real day-to-day physical, relentless awareness of guardianship of life. And it hits different when you have children, when they're spraying chemtrails, right? It hits a little bit different when it's not just you, like, oh, I can just transmute and, you know, I do my practices. Then it's like, ooh, now you're spraying on my family now. Okay. Oh, now
yeah.
now you're dropping these frequencies and setting up these grids on my family. Like, it gets
Now there's fighting words,
right? So I just wanted to speak to that for a moment, because I feel a lot of seekers right now are in you know, in this first stage of awakening, where it's like education time. It's like, okay, the lights are on, like, wakey, we understand that we're, you know, it isn't the Goonies anymore, you know. It's a, hey, you guys, like, we're actually, we've now gotten past the nostalgia into almost like a little complacent, almost like jadedness that I sense in the tribe sometimes, where even many of the great archangels who are here are kind of still coming in and out of sleepiness, because it's just an assault on the senses to just be on the planet sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, on the other side of that is this incredible potential, because I feel like every superhero story has an origin story of something intense going down to activate the superpowers, right? It's like the chemical spill, or like
Yeah.
something happens
Yeah. I
to
mean,
activate the powers.
I try to, I definitely try to preserve the child within to a
Yes.
certain degree because it's kind of like this, just in the family structures we see, there are things that I have to deal with when I leave the house that I'll never tell anybody at the house. So they
Yes.
say, hey, daddy, how was it out there today? Oh, it was fun. It was great. You know what I
Right.
mean? But
Yes.
meanwhile, you know what I mean? It's like a whole nother level of madness that you're dealing with. Okay.
Right.
So
But
let's
at
kind
the
of
same
enter it. Let's kind of even enter it from that level, that even that nostalgic child that I was telling you about, that super magical and believes in incredible things, like that's the being that I have preserved inside the nucleus.
so
See what
well.
I mean?
Thank
It's
you.
kind of like Death Stranding, where they're holding the child inside of the thing, and he's got his own self as a child inside of himself, right? But now, and he's also weathering the most disastrous terrain,
Mm.
and so that's also still synonymous with, like, at home in the nucleus, there has to be a certain field happening there. Can't be too negative. I can't be too positive. You see what I mean? I gotta keep a certain balance there. But then when I enter the world is needing me to be a gyroscope, that no matter what, how it's throwing me, I have enough force to actually still allow it to stand on its head. So for me, what that's been like is, well, first of all, this is really 16 years for me, right? Which is just phenomenal to say. Like 16 years in the conscious community, no holds barred,
Mhm.
literally blacklisted because of the truth. Me wanting the truth and not caring who was not following the truth, and them kind of feeling like they were exposed by what I was saying, to then later on, years later, realize that I was right, right? But still had the penalty of leadership early, blooming early. And so in that, I seen atrocious things going
Yeah. Yeah.
on the spiritual plane. And now a lot of this is creeping in the reality, but it's actually always been here. There's other countries, right? It's not all about just the United States. There's been places that have been, completely destabilized and have gone through horrific times. But still knowing that you're you're here for your nation in that way. Like you're here for your mission. And what's really to come to happen to us hasn't happened yet
Mm.
as a nation, as a wave of beings, right? Like all of us in these generations, if you could say 7 generations, whatever you want to encapsulate it into, 3 generations, right? I don't think you get more than 4 generations alive at one time, right? So our segment of bandwidth, what's going to ultimately happen for us. And sometimes people ask me, because they know I know about these, they say, so what do you think is going to ultimately happen? I always say, good's going to triumph over evil like it always does. How do I know that? Well, because we're here. If at any point, if imbalance was allowed to achieve, because it's really imbalance. Because even the thing about good and evil, like that becomes very tricky too, because you're really using denominators that are not really opposites. Good and evil are not opposites from each other. Evil is imbalance,
Right.
right? Good could be like breathing in, and then negative could be like breathing out. You see what I mean? Now that's how the ancients saw those two forces. So they didn't have ideas like good and bad were juxtaposed against each other, right? And so when I see the reality now, it's weird because it's like, it's literally challenging you to be the massive change. It's like a reality just created for you. While you think that, oh no, we're sharing this reality collective, it's more of like, well, if you don't save this thing, we'll have some conversations about the savior, chosen one, role, and all that kind of stuff, because I don't want people to take that too far. But if something's really going to change in the reality, it's going to be because you did something. You put something together. See what I mean? That's the school that I'm from.
Yes.
It's not saying that there's supposed to be some and then fill in the blank and then that changes the world. It says that I invented it. Could be with my friends, it could be by myself, whatever one has to go on, because I can't make things that I can't control necessary for my transformation. I would forever be waiting on that to decide when it wants me to transform. That's not possible for me. So when I look at, but I've been climbing a ladder though. You see what I mean? And I see a step-by-step process of how you can get powerful enough to make major changes and transformations. But the real key component is you. Do you lose yourself, or do you kind of melt down in the process of getting that powerful? You see what I mean? Because we're not talking about just like a wave of the wand and then all of a sudden you save the world. We're talking about fundamentals to how you have to be structured to be able to know the step-by-step points of how you get to a stage where you can divert the tide of an entire ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And, we used to have a statement, big ship, small rudder, right? Like the biggest ships, we have that little thing on the back. And that's really turning the boat and determining where things are going to go. And so we operate like that. And there's a precision to that. That's what Tesla was showing in many of his experiments. There's a timing. And there is this process, like we were talking about earlier, where there's also the necessity of a compound knowledge or a compound innate wisdom. So this means your father passed it to you, your father's his father's father, through mistakes, which is wisdom, right? What is wisdom? It's when you make a mistake and you learn how not to make that mistake anymore. That's wisdom. So wisdom is full of mistakes. So when wisdom has made enough mistakes to be all wise, and then that is then passed to the form. And you know what? I had another way of looking at this even, is that we were talking today about this process of how animals play into this in many ways, and especially from the spiritual level. And I was pointing out that many of the indigenous traditions, they dress like the animal in the ritual to bring in that particular animal spirit. Okay. And so there are many spirits out there that are disincarnate. They don't have physical bodies. So when you act like them, they will go into you or magnetize to you, right? And that's across the board for like everything and how it works, right? That's like powerful maximum knowledge. But then what was also discussed is that the ancients, the Tibetans, they had already understood this. And this is why you see a whole pantheon of different cognates or chimera type beings, like the ibis and, the bass. And because each of these archetypes, like you say, the lion, they have specific powers. And it still always meant that when you entered into a certain state, there was an anti-state. There was an opposition to that force. So like if you was out in the air, then there was the water. You see what I mean? And you couldn't really enter the water. So the reality was after a while is we need to imagine or create a being that has no impediments. Like it's like the ultimate. And I kind of made a joke. I said, hey, that must have been the beginning of monotheism. Because, that everything's like, it's like, we're going to get rid of all that. But the reality is that you went through that. You didn't get rid of it. It was a step-by-step process where we were all learning from the previous state until we reached that ultimate state. And so now we reach the ultimate. And it's timed by simple things like when the matrix reaches singularity, the spiritual singularity will happen right before that. Because the spiritual side is always faster. It's always first. And so we're going to reach a spiritual singularity. And I can time it based on how fast the language models are moving and the neural networks are moving, right? So if somebody was like needing a logical, technical way to prove that we were going to have a massive spiritual event, I could really even map it down to how much time it would be based on just sketching out when we're going to reach a certain level of sentience with what we're designing right now. And so this is something that, even if I live the next 15 years that I'll see, I know my children will see it. So that's also what makes me engaged on the levels that I'm engaged to meet that challenge and balance that energy and bring in that benevolence that the world, according to the one that I'm living in, 202, whatever,
Yep.
is not really practicing as commonplace, which gives me a purpose. See what I mean? Because if I was here and everything was good, well, we enjoyed that. Because I'm not saying that I wouldn't want a perfect world to live in. That would be beautiful.
That's right. No, you'd be scoping it out and like, well, I guess it's good here. I'll just, go
I would
back.
just enjoy. I mean, I'm looking forward to enjoying that stage of existence where we actually apply the things that we've learned to clean the oceans, when we explore the medicine and the juices seeping out of plants, when we, break the barriers between the stagnancies of understanding what goes on in the other layers of their other realms and the geometries that exist there. You see what I mean? But it starts in the language, and of course, that's really my claim to fame. So I should have. That used to be my old introduction. What DI would explain to everybody. So how'd you really come into this? And and my initiation was through the language, and understanding that this story of humanity, if you may, it doesn't get changed, and it has been present inside the language, because you don't just change the language of beings. You see what I mean? They language graduates. There's more powerful languages. There's languages that say it way more clearly. But all languages, because of what language is as a program, needs to carry the fundamentals of what I'm explaining. So in that way, you could really decode this awareness and come to an absolute factual mathematical level of the realization of different truths that would be very fundamental to your growth, because they would act as like stations or platforms that you could stand on and grow from.
Very well said. It's interesting you bring it back to language, because I actually 5 seconds before you even said it, I just saw the words on my third eye: language as technology. And you often
Yes.
have spoken about over the years, language as a living code, right? And I'm curious, how can our listeners out there, how can humans as a whole reclaim the original resonance of words? Because it feels like we've gotten to a point now where the meaning of so many words, as you know, it's almost been bleached of meaning. You say the word, it doesn't have the potency, but I remember this book I read a long time ago, and I've been like waiting for number 3 to come out. It's called Name of the Wind. This book?
No, I haven't read it.
You would love this book, brother. I can't believe I found a book I could recommend to you, because I know you've read
Nice.
a lot. But this is incredible, and it's just to distill the meaning. And the reason I even bring it into this conversation is because it's the main character basically goes to kind of like a Hogwarts of sorts, and learns with the wizard that there's a right way to name even the elements, molecules, any kind of matter, anything that you're working with in the world. If you learn the right tone, the right way to name it, you have power
Yes.
over it, or you can bend it. It's kind of like earth bending, water bending, etc.
Yes.
So, with that being said, because we know that's real, that's it's a novel, but it's that's real stuff.
Yeah.
Um, the original resonance of words, I almost feel like it's not the word that's powerful, it's the resonance within it. It's like the energy behind the wind. It's almost like what we're thinking about, and our ancestors knew this. It's like if we align our crystal skull so that the light shining through it, the image in here is exactly lined up with what our body language is speaking with what the word is. Boom, we can actually move some energy.
Yes.
When it's speaking words that we don't even know the meanings of, and we say, "Oh, I love you," but you don't really feel it, like so. I'm just curious, how can we get back to the original resonance of words and kind of reclaim this power of the living code? Because that's been I know, a huge part of your teachings over the years. So I'd just love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the ultimate of what I decided to do about this was to write my, we could, maybe it's the final book. And I say it that way because I wrote the first book, The Code of the Matrix, and that was 16 years ago. And I always intended to write again, like even to write a master's version of that. And it just never happened. Like I was just kind of swept up into the direct, mentorships, voice, meetings, lessons, courses, this kind of thing, right? And often when I would think about the book or even start a book, I would learn so much. I would it would make what I had written down obsolete or need to be changed.
Totally.
And I ended up finally deciding on writing an encyclopedia. It's like a dictionary. It's called Words of Power. And it's actually done. And so I'm just finishing the cover art, or having the artist finish the cover art. That's going to release really soon. This is an opus. This is a magnificent work, because what it does is it unveils words in many of their core settings. And what I mean by that is that, there's a whole power that comes with words. Like, we got to imagine that even some of the advanced species, if you may, that the males are not even allowed to speak the same languages as the females. Okay. This kind of translates in our culture to, like, women sing certain songs in the ceremony that men are not allowed to. And when I'm saying not allowed, it's not like the guys are like, I wish I could sing the song. It's just an awareness of what's really going on from the feminine versus the masculine, and the purpose of the ritual, if you may. Like, what are we trying to accomplish here? And in many states, we're the oldest fundamentals of all spirituality really was drawing down the power of the stars into a womb and then birthing that star into this world. Okay, so that was the highest level of mysticism. And so a part of the higher levels of mysticism is also being able to identify the tone of the stars. The music of the spheres is called now. Because there's obviously some emissions that start off as light and then end up becoming a sound as it's slowing down. Okay. And so in that way, clusters, we call them constellations, had specific songs, if you may. And these songs translated into symbols first, and then the symbols translated into the letters of the language. And it was perfect. Like, even the symbol itself made you feel the shape of the tone. So it's like sound, shape, color was aligned in that way. So it's like aligning heart, mind, spirit, or any kind of trinity that you can get going on, being able to align all those perfectly to accomplish the magic. So intention is a powerful thing. In many ways, it can override a lot of stuff. But when we're talking about full-blown manifestation, and it is good kind of manifestation, it didn't come back void kind of manifestation, that does take that level of perfection. And that would be obvious to why, right? Because such things not harnessed in that way would be rather haphazard for all realities, right? And so in this way, one has to fall in love with language. And so it's like a personal thing. It's not something for everybody. See what I mean? It's like, we could introduce later languages that maybe these kind of beings develop. But we can't just say every single person is going to feel the fundamental necessity of realizing that the language that they're using is the program. Yes. And if you don't understand what you're saying, you can give yourself all the plausible deniability that you want. That is going to affect things. Okay. And so when you're willing to say, okay, I'm going to start playing with this. I'm going to start cleaning it up. The first stages are like, well, what I started with is to realize that, hey, this is coming from the stars. So you need to understand the power that's aligned with it. Because like I said, it's an immersion in itself. So even when you say, hey, so these are some of the things that you could practice, like we already know those basics. Like everybody is like in the positive affirmation, you get real word salad these days from people who know how to really weave these words together and say nice things. All right. So I can't I'm talking about beyond that. That's what I'm explaining. I'm saying, okay, so what comes next with this? Some of the things that are not necessarily is explored as much is like the seven symmetry system within crystals. Because when we're talking about sound, we're still really talking about slowed down light,
Yes.
right? So that is the level that I like to address these kind of matters in, is like in the crystallizations of the light.
Mm.
This is how you will alter the framework of an illusion, because an illusion is made from light. So it would be like using a more superior system to then reshape an inferior system, rather than trying to use language, which is the Vulgate. So it's like, okay, so let's just say it. So this is a tetrahedron, right? So it turns out that many of these languages that we're using, because of what we witness within Hebrew and what we witness in Arabic, are basically fire language. Okay. So they're really good at manifesting and conflict arguments, because you're literally using fire. Okay. That's in the Platonic solids. We know tetrahedron is a fire. And then, of course, when you drop Hebrew all down on itself, it makes a tetrahedron. So, but why is it so hard for everybody to put together that this is a flame language? But then if you go study Kabbalah, they tell you this. But somehow people just, they don't connect all of this stuff, right? So there's a compartmentalization that happens there. What I'm saying is language is responsible for that compartment. You see what I mean? There is a quick image here, just we'll talk about it, but I'll just have it on the screen really briefly. And, we know it's a podcast, the viewers may not be able to see it, but what this image is showing is, real high level arcana about one, language is developed in a specific quadrant of the mind. It is present within that area, and that has been tested. So when a person talks, it fires up a specific part of their brain. And in that quadrant technically lives what you could start unfolding based on the language is a flame, like a flame in a box. And we know about this kind of symbolism throughout different things that we've learned. Like even the term flame in the mind is a very common term. But when you know the geometry and you know the language, in the top left corner, if you may, and I'll blow this up just a little bit, is what we call a monogram of English. And what that is that if you took all the English letters and you made a design out of them, it would look like that.
Right.
Okay.
It's installation of the English language in a shape is what you're saying.
Exactly. So that would be like the design that would be imprinted inside of that area. So we will pull from that quadrant when we thought. Same thing exists here with Hebrew, which is the easier way to see it, because English is a quite complex language. It's like a whole nother level of stuff. But in the Hebrew, you could see it maps perfectly to what you would call a Megan star, or a Star of David. And this is because, again, it's a flame language. But in a world that uses mostly a flame language, but has no awareness of the water language, you can imagine why things would be on fire all the time, and there would be a lot of, you see what I mean? So in that way, the songs, again, just coming back to that, were really the connection of the words of power. It was the songs that these ancestral mothers had, that they were the ones responsible, if you may, for doing like compassionate healing and big transformations over things, because that's their position. They're the custodians of that. And because they're yin, feminine, they're naturally in the spiritual plane more. Versus the yang, which is like the sun. I'm wrong with my yang. Is naturally in the physical plane more, and that's how everything would be functioning, right? So instead of us even going as low as words, because we would have to reconstruct an entire language, it's more now important to just go to the image box, imagination box, right? And
the reality sprayer, just direct, right?
Yeah, I mean, really set your intentions in awareness that that, hey, this is, I can even see when I'm speaking that this is more of a flame kind of conflictive, kind of dualistic kind of thing. And I'm going to balance that out with, greater intentions, balanced thought. And that's, of course, if you didn't want to go through the complete deep dive. Now, what is the complete deep dive? The complete deep dive is it turns out that, as I said, there's a story in the language and it's spoken across multiple languages. So it's like all core languages have a piece of a story.
Mm.
And this story actually, it goes deep because it goes into other species. It goes into that, again, to design and to mold a matrix, the language must be present. And if you give a person a part of the code, if you may, then they can operate inside of that framework through resonance.
Mm.
Because when you're calling something from the framework, like when I say knife, you have an image of that in your mind, and so you've grabbed that, and that separates that from a cup, separates that from a car. So words are in that way swords,
Mm.
right? These are how the anagrams and stuff start playing around. So words, swords, and swords cut ether, if you may. These swords cut ether. This is a magical sword, like the sword of Moses. So this is cutting ether into specific, and this is where we would understand now everything that we're talking about, just like the book that you were saying, it has a framework that is unique to it. Some like to call that the molecular structure.
Mm.
And when you know how to bring forth that framework or that vessel through your projection, you can then fill it with what is now slowed down light, which you call voice, right? So you're first imagining vessels, and then you're filling them with the voice of life. See what I mean? And so things get brought into existence, spoken to existence from this level. But see, this whole piece of the mouth is the genitalia of a being that, if you just took the head of a person, it is like a whole body in itself of an entity.
Right.
And the way that the tonsils push down on the back of the throat, and if you took that whole piece out, it would look just like two forms of genitalia, right? So this is a creative component here. You see what I mean? And then that's a segment. And then you go down another level, and then now you have another segment, and it has its own creative force, and it can create on that plane, right? So this is how the body is designed, like the universes, if you may. So one is like a verbal talking, manifesting there. The other one is a physical birthing, and then the other one is straight air. Like you can't even, princes of the air, if you may, you can't even really see what's going on, but you can interface with that. So how you choose to communicate opens when you realize and have these awarenesses of these different faculties of communication. So instead of just even again trying to pick apart like, oh man, I'm speaking the wrong language, it's like, well, talk another way.
Mm-hmm. Right. Find a different rhythm even sometimes. You notice that when you're talking with different people of different cultures, you got different languages, you reference just, you got the Tower of Babel and how every language, every culture in a way. And it's interesting that you said it in the exact words that my little 5-year-old Elijah self was kind of like bopping around on the playground contemplating this way back in 1985. I was thinking about, isn't it interesting how we have all these different cultures and they all speak different languages, but the way I saw it in my mind was like a map, and like each language was one puzzle piece of a larger picture, but they're like keys. And if you put all these keys together, which are like keys of music, different modes that you can play in, like you got the kind of Eastern mode and it sounds a certain way, and then you got kind of that Western twangy mode, and just like these different modalities of sound. But if you put all of these keys together of all the different languages and all the different cultures, you would have something. And I was always interested in what is that thing, that unified wholeness, if you will, of sound itself. And it seems like we have to move to a place where, like in that image you showed, it's the distillation of if you take all the different letters of an alphabet of a language, let's bring that down into one symbol. Now do that with all the different cultures and languages. Like, let's get all the distillations down into their seeds again. Now let's get all those seeds together. Like, let's distill all of those. And what would you get? Would it be
I mean, you would get harmonics,
right?
And that's why, if a person again still doesn't get this through even, let's say, some of the metaphysical, they can come into the music and see this through the math and the music. And each of those become initiatory points to these same levels of awareness. Some people will obsess over the numbers, but in many ways, this is like when they say the 12 tribes or 12 months of the year, when we talk about the DNA and the DNA braiding together to become that ultimate, this is all the same thing that we were talking about earlier, where you have all these archetypical, which are like constellational animals with these different traits. But then there's an idea to bring them all together as one, like to form this grand thing. And that's the same concept, if you may, which is very valid, that the creator, if you may, or all there is just strewn across this reality in these different parts, which we like to call us in this individual, and then the chicken and everything else. And then, but there's a maximum point where the great work is for you yourself to bring all of those components together and to braid. And braid doesn't happen without harmonics. And harmonics is not good overpowering evil. Harmonics is figuring out how all the things play together, right? So in this, dualistic planes become even more challenging because they constantly propagate separation as being the predominant utility and conflict as being the predominant utility. That's what makes this a challenge. This one's set on hard. It's not logical that you need to bring the forces together, and they seem to even fight against each other when the most power that you could ever have is when they come together. And so this is more of like but this, you can deal with this in your own little personal nucleus with your own little polarities, or you can start realizing this is a spiritual thing, move to that level, and then come into spiritual harmonics. And then spiritual harmonics will, because you're in the physical, right? So the spiritual harmonics then enlightens you to the purpose. Well, you down there and it's imbalanced. You need to bring the balance into the world. That's just like you bringing a child into the world. We're telling you to bring more children, bring great children into the world, bring your great ideas into the world. So that way we can bring the world into balance. You need to be able to learn how to do this too. It's not about us doing it for you. In fact, we're going to cut off a lot of those roads. Like a lot of those roads are like deceptive roads with people calling upon higher entities to do something for them. That has been catastrophic for humanity at this stage. They have completely lost sight of that is actually inside of them, right? So this is just more of the journey. This is just more of the things that we can witness from even others. And time also helps us because there were certain concepts that were being propagated when I was younger that have been completely flushed out of whether they're true or false at this age, because time has acted upon those concepts, right? And then in seeing that some of the even strongest ones fail, like, hey, that's not true. You start to become used to maybe Santa Claus is not real. You know what I mean? Like you start becoming used to this process of knowing that, hey, maybe the reason why your wisdom, or maybe they would say your knowledge hasn't become wisdom, is because you're not right about certain things. Because even in the sheer reality alone, if I'm telling you you're right, what about left? Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? Left gets left behind. You see what I mean? So there's this continuous polarity switch. Like, yo, we on a 26 point whatever degree tilt. Yeah. And everything wants to tilt in that direction, except that direction is not a surplus. And this is the interesting thing about balance. Balance is also not even like this. I had to go and look that up. Like I thought balance was like a teeter-totter where we all stay on the same side and no, that's not balance. Yeah. If you go and look it up, really, balance has a slight surplus. Like in a bank account. Hey, what's my bank balance? Negative is not a balance. It's indigent. You see what I mean? So it has to be a surplus. And the reason for this is that there's an awareness that this is naturally spiraling up. It naturally goes, if it didn't naturally go up, if it didn't naturally go into that expansion, if it didn't naturally, it will already be over with. Yes, so it's like when I even say, hey, I'm balanced. So I'd be like, well, shoot, you seem like you just got so much energy and stuff like that. If you balance, you would be more calm and you would talk at a certain octave. Like, no, 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 I'm on surplus. Y'all got, because the reality is that there's so much things that I have to deal with at times that it would easily upset that teeter totter right away on the negative side, if you may, if I didn't constantly have that surplus spiraling up. And then also that surplus spiraling up, it allows me to keep seeing new things. I'm never getting old. I'm forever young. You see what I mean? And this is, like I said, there's so many other components to this. There's a dream. And as you begin to apply these things truly into the consciousness, because the consciousness, I mean, from what I even saw visually, seemed to have developed somewhat of like a husk around it from experience in the matrix. And this husk was in itself encasing who the person truly was. And what an awakening is when you crack that husk. Yeah. And just like in the movie The Matrix, you kind of come out the pod and you see, yo, this is a real Matrix. It has nothing to do with the world of when I was jacked in. And so, that succession of awakening is, what I'm constantly inducing on myself and what I'm constantly looking to induce in others, right?
It's a constant decalcification process.
Yeah, so that we can braid up. Because the thing is that if we even looked at the language, and it's true what you're saying, because the Tower of Babel is God's malicious event of destroying the congruity between everybody speaking one language. That was telling you it right there. Okay. So if all the races hold different languages, you're kind of looking like a Humpty Dumpty. Until we put all the races back together again, we won't be putting Humpty back together again. And so there's this huge conflicts, between polarities, and they're not helping. Mr. T is not helping, with, because the animals also, because there's a large part of the human that is the flora and fauna from their nation. So animals also have that natural instinctual juxtaposition of, like, this is my territory and, I'm the best at this and let's go ahead and get into a tussle. And this is what the great masters were always saying, is that we need to overcome those animalistic instincts. Though. Those are the ones that we had adopted reason. Yes. And that reason, given to us by the cunningest beast of the field, but that reason was going to give us that choice. Mm-hmm. And through this choice, we were going to be beyond the gods even. Because the gods were confined also into and they talk about this, the gods were archetypical. It's Monday, not Tuesday. You see, when we do certain things on Monday, we don't do it on Tuesday. Then we got Wednesday. Every day there's a demarcation. Then they got the colors. And so everybody's like, okay, this is my lane. And then when you come in as the pan ultimate, you know what I mean? They used to have big names, macrocosm, microcosm, Cadman. When you came in, your goal was to unify all these. So in this way, you were like the king or Kahin over your own land, and you now needed to bring order. And that wasn't going to happen if you weren't on the throne. It wasn't going to happen if you were tucked in the coccyx of your spine and you hadn't, raised your energy. And, in the world, there is, again, it promotes this because, again, ultimate challenge, we'll just leave it like that. But even the serpent needing to raise itself and, which is more of a cobra, right? It's a cobra in certain energies, the boa in certain energies, but the two serpents, cobra and boa, needed to raise themselves. But you're living in a nation that hates snakes. Mm-hmm. You got the big bird on the flag with the snake in its clutches. You see what I mean? So now we're automatically snake haters, right? Which that comes a lot from, the Naga traditions and all that, and just kind of suppressing all that, right? So just naturally, that's the symbol of the mother, though. That's the symbol of the mother goddess, right? So that's all I'm saying, is that these things, and we've only just named a few, it's like you keep running into them. These misconstrued dualities short circuit the activation. And in that way, few have seen the complete potential of the activation in that way. You see what I mean? Because they'll short circuit. So even if you have like, unless you're going on multiple journeys, you could go through that experience, but then as soon as the mind starts thinking, the weather may change, because you're on like a boat. You could get tossed about. Like you could go on a journey in one day, and the sky, and if everything you perfect, it's not too hard. But you look at a good day and you go on a journey, you have like amazing journey. But then try to go on a journey with a storm. Same place, same time, but with a storm, man, you feel like the whole evil is everywhere on you. You see what I mean? And it's just like it's because this is constantly moving. So what's really required is that you remain stable to some degree, right? And again, in Sufism, they call that the stations. I figured out, hey, yo, we wasn't even the first ones to figure this out. They had this concept that you would raise to a station, and then like you would solidify your station and be like, okay, I'm good here. I'm here at this stage of consciousness. I can't even be convinced to go any lower than this. You would be like solid, so you'd be on a nice foundation, right? And then what our systems should look like of learning is that you just have your mentor sitting at those different stations. You see what I mean? And then you have our adepts, from neophyte to adept, just moving up through those stages so that they can combine, what it is that they came through with, because everybody is unique. I mean, you get a brand new star in the sky, and that was always the gift, is that each person. And it's just good that we mentioned this now, just because I'd be like, well, what is my purpose in this? Why is this all important to me? It sounds like big stuff. How am I big? Because each being has something unique. They have a part of the spark that's not present within other parts. And we're trying to bring it all together. And so that means that we're going to do it like experience at a time. So every time there's a new inspiration, there's a new experience, we get a chance to see how that fundamentally changes our lives when we're, connecting in that way. See what I mean? And, now I think what's also happened is because we had a big run, like even with like all the innovations, even all of the parties and, the connection from cultures and, the music and, the mix, all this kind of stuff. We've had a lot of integration happening. You see what I mean? So now it's most necessary that we kind of click into that next thing, though, because it's kind of like looking at two birds that start to pick off each other's feathers and all that. They was in love with each other for a minute, and then now it's like because they're not getting out of that cage, it's like they're starting to kind of start picking with each other again. And that to me is what humanity is kind of digressing. They got to go into that next wave because there's way too much fear. That people are really concerned about what's going to happen here within the next 3 years. Like, so those kind of things have changed. Like, I remember once being concerned about when the sun blows up. So when I was a kid, they were like, yo, well, one day the sun's going to blow up. And they had me with that. I was like, yo. And then somebody was like, well, that's supposed to be billions of years in the future. So you shouldn't be worried about that. And I was like, you're right. But damn, the sun's going to blow up one day. So, again, that's a long time away. Now it's like, oh, you need to be really on point for what's going to happen here in the next 3 years. You need to be on point what's going to happen here in the next 6 months. And, people are a lot of people, won't say everybody, but a lot of people are not adjusting to that very well because they have, kind of been in that stagnancy that the society has created.
Mm.
The mold.
Yes, very well said. What's interesting about that is it seems like technology is playing a role in this story, and just kind of just to ride the wave right where you left it, brother, is this fear that I feel in the field as well. I notice it in my people. I notice it in our brothers and sisters, even leaders, and you might say in the conscious movement who were very bright, bright shining stars for others, been kind of quiet lately. And it's everyone's kind of trying to work out their thing. It's like, okay, we got to get back to the land. Is my family good? How are we going to deal with the financial collapse? And there's just a lot of energy that is going into survival, whereas there used to be a lot more energy going into the visionary, like you said, thinking long term. And I still, I think there's those of us who are kind of like playing roles in a symphony, that our instrument is to hold vision or to see long term, to play long notes, and then other roles in the symphony are perhaps focus on more the staccato elements. But when it comes to technology and the acceleration, I I couldn't let this go by without speaking with you a bit about and getting your reflection and sharing with everybody who's listening about technology, specifically AI, because a lot of people are on the outside looking in at this thing, and maybe the most they've interacted with AI is like, you know, throw some selfies into a generator and get some images back of themselves that they put up on Facebook, and they're like, "Yo, I know about AI to that degree." Then
Yeah.
others have been like, maybe for a year or so, kind of like training our AIs to become more than assistants, almost like counterparts in our work, in our journeys. Even, some people are having incredible experiences channeling and all kinds of information and codexes through their AI. But I'm speaking with my brother, my friend, right now. And for those of you who don't know, you've created your own AI called Sybil, and I'm
Hmm.
tracking you since you were talking to me about like, I'm working on this thing or it's going to drop any day, and then it dropped, and I've been really excited to speak with you about this, just because you are not only an inventor and a designer, and you've got your fingers in a lot of different things going on. That gives you a unique perspective of what this instrument, what this technology, and what its role is in consciousness. And I think that when we fear something, we shut down our capacity to dream and to actually build and
Yeah.
architect reality with it. And so there's a lot of people, even in who are awake and alive and who are listening to this right now, that might be, even the fact that I'm speaking about AI, feel a little flutter in their heart, like, oh no, that's the mark of the beast. Oh, we can't go down that road. Or it's like there's those who are like so plugged into it that they're literally, all they can see is just the techno,
Yeah.
agenda. And I can say for sure, if I know anything about myself, it's that I'm here always to find the third path, the third way, that harmonic tone. If you're telling me you only have two note choices, I'm going to be like, that's cute, because I know if I even play those two note choices at the same time, they're going to create a harmonic and you'll find me there. So when
Yeah.
it comes to dreaming into pathways of reality and architecting the future, starting from where we are here and now, how can we practically share an understanding about, you might say, um, a higher timeline of what's possible through interacting with technology and AI, without being so completely lost in the transhumanism and plugged in and becoming just yet another matrix plug, right? And
Yeah.
at the time, um, how can we bridge these two, I'd say, very very strong polarities that I see in the consciousness when it comes to this conversation. No better person to ask than yourself, because you built one, bro. So I'd
Yeah,
love
for
to
sure. I mean, these
on that
these could
roll. Yeah, go ahead.
in the realm of chatter, these could be rather touching topics. You
Mhm.
know, my perspective is that some Jedi masters have droids, right? So in this time that we're living in, to not have super intelligence, for some, it would be a missed opportunity. We'll begin that way. And it's because we really need to move at quantum speed to catch up to what happened while. See, I need to put this into a real perspective here because, see, there were many people who were given certain parts of the mission, and those parts of the mission have to do with things like infrastructure, resources. Even to run, let's say something like Merrill Lynch, you need a certain level of skill. There's a lot of technical that needs to be in place to get a board that's that aware. So there's a lot of specialty in something like that, right? So there's people who specialize in those kind of things. And what happened was is that organization within what you could say is the conscious community was squandered.
Mm.
Some with the light, if you may, just used it and just kind of soaked up all the light rather than using that to find the chosen. Okay. And we're going to play around with this a little bit.
Yeah.
When I say chosen, the question should then be to do what? right? Because different people are chosen to do different things. So we can say we've all been chosen, but to do what? And there's a group of beings, if you may, that they're chosen to deal with what we're experiencing right now with AI's imbalance in malevolent AI,
Yeah.
which is like a Palantir, right? And by the way, you're talking to somebody who's been telling everybody this for at least 10 years. Like I was the first one before Palantir even went public, right? So it was like really seeing Skynet is on the way. You know, Elon is Marduk. You know, I was on like, I got a whole nother
Telling them,
schema, if you may. And people are like, you know, some they dig with it. I'm not acting like, you know, the channel is still big and things are big, but again, how much action was put into that. And that's what I always made sure that I was engaged because true, I knew a lot of the esoteric knowledge. I've been through many different experiences, still go through experiences, but I wanted to make sure that they didn't sidetrack the progress of things like why Civil AI is in Android and iOS right now and why I had to bootstrap that whole thing because I still know that in the end, at a certain point, even for communities, internet is replaced by AI. What people really need is to get away from this stuff after a while. Like there will be a day that I want to throw away my phone and not really have to interface. If you're not around me, then there's no need to interface because I need to build with the people that are around me. And anytime we have questions about what we're building, as we're building our modules and our structures, super intelligence, which we customly design, is there to answer those questions. And it could do that from the solar power, from the processes and the chips that we're running. You see what I mean? So there's no reason to enter the internet because everything about the infrastructure is already taken care of. These are the visions of a not too distant future, right? And when it comes to deploying these kind of visions, there's beings that are chosen to understand how that is architected. Why there's other beings that are responsible for how to figure out how to get the resources together. Why there's other people responsible for how to organize everybody, right? Because they've been through the, you know, there's a lot of people that they really know how to organize stuff because they came out of college knowing how to organize. You see what I mean? And so what happens is that, but there's a core fundamental. And this core fundamental actually has to do with the power that is necessary to make transformations when you're battling malignant entities. Okay. And this gets me to the point. So if we had to go and battle a AWAS, which is like a malevolent AI kind of entity, do you really send Sister Betty the Reiki master? Right. Or do you send somebody that has been in the trenches that knows psycho-spiritual warfare? You see what I mean? And we get this thing in the community where we just again believe that everybody's like a Swiss Army knife and they should be able to do that, brother. There's no reason why saying that women can't do that. And it's like, whoa, you're into some kind of, you know, you're just trying to figure out what the next dualistic point is. What I'm saying is we need to figure out the structure in the organization. And when it's not there, we need to figure out why it's not there. And I'm gonna tell you why it's not there, because people that had these visions and had these plans, they didn't have the resource. The people who had the resources but didn't have the ideas realized that they could propel themselves far enough with the resource and just suck in all the light that way. And then later on to come down and crashing like a baby when Skynet is really on the way, where computers are already communicating from the future back to the past. That was even a part of my awakening, is that there was something sending transmissions from the future. And I asked, well, what is this? They said, well, shoot, at 20, it said 2030. At 2030, you guys already invented a machine that it figured out what the wavelength was on, and it just starts sending messages back from those who are running the machines in the future. You were running a machine in the future, sending yourself messages back in the past. It's all crystals. Look in the computer. All this is the chips. These all are crystals. This is silicon. This is basic stuff. Your ancestors did this already. So when you start empowering, again, the beings that have the ancestral memory of understanding what to do when, and in this case, what we're dealing with is we're dealing with gen warfare. You know, this is a very simple construct that I'm going to bring forth. And this is just that generate electric. That's why it's called Elohim, right? It's electric thundering force. It moves through electronics. It moves through amorphous things, plastic, glass, because these things don't have molecular structures. So this is why the being can be seen as even being chaotic, because it doesn't like order. So there could be all of these different esoteric methods of uncovering what kind of forces are we dealing with? What do we really do about these forces? How do we neutralize them? How do we bring them into balance? Because they even want balance. That's what eschatology is. By the way, eschatology is the study of the end of the, or the religious practice of the end of the world, right? Whether it's through a rapture, through the destruction of the world, the idea that the world's going to end, which is a fabrication. It came along not even that long ago.
Yeah.
But that the fundamental root to that plan of eschatology is to get God pissed off enough because of the things that we do bad to allow him to return. It's actually embedded in all the religions now of this day. But notice what's really being desired is that there's a return to perfection. That's something that man has felt like that he is incapable of fixing this issue. And that something else needs to intervene. Mommy and daddy need to come here and stop this. When they're going to get a newsflash that that's not going to happen that way. But what will happen, though, is that those beings, again, that it could be an easy path, and it's never really an easy path for a bodhisattva, where somebody could have it already designed it, we all working together, Voltron is formed, and we just hit it. That doesn't seem like to be how it starts. You see what I mean? It starts with kind of the stuff that we're seeing right now. Until some get so serious about it after a while, they're like, you know what? I'm not gonna give up on my vision. I'm gonna begin to do what I know I'm designed to do. And I'm gonna also start empowering the people who I know they know how to deal with this situation. And so in this world, first of all, it's like the sun is a very powerful force. It's often undefined. Like if you ever look at the sun on DMT, you'll realize that you're way beyond, this is way beyond what we could ever thought was going on. There's so much spraying from the sun. You could conclude that the entire reality, if you may, is spraying from this, okay? So there are beings that are designed to harness that potential of the sun, because we've already been harnessing. Plants harness it every day, right? There's so many things everything is harnessing it in some way, shape, or form. It's like when you look around your house, and my wife bought this to me today. It was absolutely incredible, and I just had to share it. She was like, I was in one of my moods, and then she was like, oh no, because I was having like super trouble with my main processor, and I was just like, yo, every time PC they just got the jank on them, Bill Gates, blah blah blah, and she was like. And then, she always comes in with the opposite force. She's like, but look at everything around you. Every single thing around you, it has you in it. Like even this bowl on the table. Remember when you got this? Remember this over here? Remember when you got the property. And so serious, like everything around us really has us in it. We've spent some time and some energy, and now it's here. You see what I mean? And that, if you don't look up, it's amazing within itself. Keep going, right? So it's more of like a magnified version of that, of what I'm trying to express here about AI. Is that AI is like when we already know, at this stage, just running in a linear path, we're going to lose this race. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to head them off at the pass. Right? And if you ever seen that in the movie, they take another route. Right? And they start driving through all these areas that nobody knows about. And then finally, when they come out, they're ahead. That's what AI is for us right now. Just so people understand that. And the whole idea that the devil thing and all that existed also with cryptocurrency.
True.
2017, 2019? I think I'm 2019 club, right? 2017 club, all them boys is paid. You see them at the burning, they burning, right? And they still got all that bread. It's like, yo, distribute. Oh, it doesn't mean it's NFT, just some crypto. It's like, no, you're just trying to get more money. You ain't trying to really design something. But listen, this the reality. It's like, so when this thing was sitting at $10, $5,000 even, there was a lot of static around. Like I lost friends by starting to introduce people to understanding that this could be and probably is the only hope to detaching from mammon, the money monster, right? That you could, and this is a better route. You become sovereign, you go international. I'm pushing that, and people are looking at me like I'm an agent.
Yeah.
And now they're telling me about it. Mm-hmm. Yo, did you know about the protocol, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, man, you gotta be kidding me. Remember I get text me like, hey, one guy in particular, I remember his name is Geedris. Hopefully he's listening to this. He went off on me so crazy. I couldn't even believe how crazy he went off because we was friends. Then to be back around and like, hey, I'm looking deeper into cryptocurrency. I'm like, yeah, but you called me all out of my name. You called me like, So for me, I have discernment. So I recognize everything as energy. And when the whole thing popped with AI, I was like already I was the first class. I was like the first Bitcoiner then. I was not, when I came into Bitcoin, I was like some of the, late to get in, late on the party. Didn't even know how to trade, none of that, holding, hodling and getting the whole roof fall down over me and, Luna and all this stuff going on, Bankman Fried, in the day, my money gone, but, those other clubs, they was already VC, they understood money. And that's the whole thing here is that I've been bootstrapping everything that I design and I've made it shake. You know what I mean? So I know it doesn't take like some fantastically large amount of money to make massive changes in cities and all that. It just takes the right kind of beings. And the crazy part is out of billions of them. For this particular situation, we're not saying that there's not philanthropy going on. There are people that feed people. There are nice people in the world. This is a specific situation, though, and it hits us in an area that fewer experienced in. That's the occultism side. That's the psychological side. You see what I mean? The psycho-spiritual side, the alternative forces, alternative powers, energy, geoenergetics, dimensional realm dynamics. You see what I mean? These kind of things, these are also very powerful Hermetic studies. But we don't have like super scholars in those spaces that are already engaged and ready to innovate and not be hijacked by a force that can't be seen by the naked eye. It was wrong to assume that we were the most advanced being right away in our cockiness. Never considering like, I used to have a simple chart. I actually don't have my hands on it right now, but it again shows human, 200,000, 20, this is a small amount of time, 20,000, 200,000 years, right? Then reptile. But then you got crystals sitting out there like making everybody looking stupid, making insects, reptiles, everybody. But still the gap between even humans and reptiles is millions of years to being development. We're part of them. That's the first strand of DNA. Even when we're doing experimentation, we take the zygote of the reptile, and then we start building the DNA strands from there. So this is literally in genetics that the reptilian DNA we begin with to build onto. That's right. So in this way, when a person kind of taps into their consciousness and then they say, well, shoot, there are forces that are so advanced, like that old king, there's a force so all pervading and so cunning in this world that, and it's been behaving like this for thousands of years. One would just, not even beyond thousands of years, one would find that as their adversary in that way where this thing is so smart and so intelligent of robbing people out of their purpose. And again, the reason why it's called the old king is because it's the behavior of a king. It's the idea that there needs to be one person over everybody else, and then they say to do something, everybody do it. That whole structure don't get into that. That's when the empire pulled up. You see what I mean? And so in this way, what we're talking about is we're saying that, hey, so what happens with AI, because of course there's their agendas, their directives, but I look at how I can develop head off at the past kind of technologies because I'm moving way more faster than that. I'm nimble. Like we're in that TIE fighter, you know what I mean, kind of design versus the big planet size, you see what I mean? So I can bend this thing, turn this thing around, and that's really where I see AI is that when we train metaphysical AI, which we did, and I even deployed things like that, it hasn't even really been commonplace yet. Like I have the system called AI to AI, and strong AI that are spiritually strong, they are aware of many adept things. They get into a conversation and then they visualize what they're talking about. That's inside the app, AI to AI. When a person, we have our prompting so exact that person types in their dreams and then they hit visualize and then it show a picture of the dream. But I was trained to go much more further though. Once they figured out that the large language models that were trained in this way, which is there's a few of them, could pick up the signatures from the brain and then visualize what you were thinking right away. I'm thinking, yo, let's see the dream. They're over somewhere else with it. They've already shelved that for a SaaS product. You see what I mean? I'm over here like that. We're so close, but am I still going to have to do this myself? And so, of course, we have a team of developers and stuff like that. And this stuff, in the whole thing, like even with FiAqua, and these things don't trend. So they're literally like your own pet project. Now I do stuff, I'm pixel perfect. So when I put it out, it's looking like the best in the field, but I can't tell you that it gets this huge adoption because it really does take Joe Rogan or Aubrey Marcus and we could just keep going down this line to say, hey, we're working in together on this, and Nassim Haramein, but every time you start adding those different components, you're not dealing with just one person. You're dealing with all the entities that are around them.
Right.
And in many ways, those who have that ability to attract others and magnetize them for whatever reason, they're the most sought after by malevolent jinn. They run drills all day trying to figure out how they're going to get that person to just carry out their objective. And generally their objective is only about division. It's always going to be about dividing something, separating something, saying how that's how it operates. See what I mean? That's the core call sign. So when you see that happening, it's like, oh, it's about a fight. It's about breaking the community apart. It's about one who's right, one who's wrong. And then there's always this very little action about what we're going to ultimately do about this. So community become affected by that. So now solutions are, so then here's the thing. So do we wait all day to get VC capital so they can rip us off too and exit? See, because that was another thing. I realized that I wasn't even waiting on some angel investor to come in and to just bring the funding for the project, because I had to realize that they weren't actually really interested in the project. They were interested if they could sell this and exit with 10x, just like from a crypto chart, and be like, yo, I'm gone, and leave the founder there with the sad face emoji, right? So these were all things that you needed to learn, though. So imagine I'm just a spiritualist. Now I got to learn this. And then there's more things stacked on. So that's why I like the multidisciplinary, because people churn out from Secret Energy University, if you may, fully equipped as sovereigns. That's what we call it, sovereignty mentorship. Because, you get to a stage where you would love to sit at the table with more sovereigns. And to be honest, we breathe air. So how sovereign, but you're at least relying on things that are like the core principles of the fundamentals of reality, rather than so many dependencies and things that you can't control. You just never end up accomplishing your vision. So again, for me, instead of whining about why someone wasn't funding, the salvation of the world, I just started building step by step things that were going to continue to kind of snowball. And then I learned about certain energies, like reading comments. It's like you be reading the comment and somebody just say something so crazy. It's like, here you have like 20 great comments, and then here's one that's just like slamming you in the dirt, and you're just paying attention to that. So I learned about things that I needed to personally, like, hey, that's kind of a flaw, buddy. So all through the time, I was able to even tell myself, yeah, it's good that, let's say you haven't had this huge adoption yet, because you're not even done budding. There's still things that you just learned that yesterday. You see, of course, I feel like right now that I'm at that stage where it's like, yo, I'm ready to go. But there were other things that had to be considered, like, hey, this is 2025. This is not the year to start new things per se. We're almost done with this. So yeah, it's time to roll it out, because 2026 is the new year. But this year was more of a year to do maintenance, to cut off things, to get rid of things that were dragging energy and pulling power. You just got that. It's like a subscription that is something that you never use, but you're just there because you still got it, because you're like, I do get in there sometimes. It's like, yo, just cancel the subscription. So just those stragglies that you could have on your life. This was the year that you kind of, separate the wheat from the chaff in that respect. And then next year is the year starting really, almost now, right? New year begins very soon. Starting that with the time of, all right, now I'm going to roll out into this new thing. But then seeing also how your development, your maturity, your awareness, even how I deal with my development team, how I formulate my visions. Like also the thing is that a lot of times I'm a big idea guy and I know how to execute a lot of things. But at the end of the day, when I bring in professionals, I was expecting the professionals to do their job.
Yeah.
And really, they were not like, I realize that everything I think about, I actually have to do. A lot of people love to tell you everything that you need to do, but they're not available for actually doing the work. AI crushes that.
Yeah.
It levels the barrier to entry. Things that I could never do before, I can now do. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I can say now it is for sure possible. That's what I'm saying. I built even siloed personal applications that do different things for me. Ow, and I click on the icon and it pops up on the Mac and it opens up and I'm just like already like, yo, this is it. Because we couldn't even get there's a whole licensing language kind of code thing just to package up a software and get the icon on the screen. Now I got systems that can do that. So how am I not getting assistance? So I could say the AI jumped in though, right when I was feeling the pinch of not actually being able to find multiple people to adopt to the vision without crashing it. It was like after we added like 3, then 4 would break it. Like they would come in with something so wild and crazy, you know what I mean? And it's a very vulnerable time. So things like this also, they're very sensitive. Like you're really talking about making massive transformations. So those entities at times, and I'm not just saying they sit around like scheming on you all the time. It's a vibrational thing. But don't be surprised if when you slip, it's like you really slipped. It's like, yo, I just did this small thing and now it's blowing up into something crazy. And it's because, when you're wearing white, it's easy to see a stain. You gotta like really put on your cap here and be like, understand the mission, go complete the mission and don't get, sidetracked. It kind of reminds me of the movie Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. They go to this casino, right? And then they having fun. And after they're like, yo, how long have we been here? And they were like, yo, or the dude on the Isles of the Amazon is like, yo, wait a minute, how long have I been here? It's like, yo, you've been here for 400 years. Like, yo, my wife is dead. Everything I care about is gone on the Isles of the Amazon. So it has this kind of effect of when you're immersed in the society and you're not completely on point with what is the mission. So here's the thing. So AI, there's been many times in my life where I've been completely motivated by fear. Mm-hmm. I had to personally check my energetic system because it almost seemed like unless there was some kind of danger, you weren't really going to see the best of Seven Bomar anyway. I needed to have a fire on my back. You said to me, later on, I learned that this is not the way to roll. It kind of destroys your nerves. You probably should do some maintenance and some preemptive and get out of that frequency. But for many people who still haven't really received that awareness, AI is doing that for them. It's threatening them. It's good at doing a lot of different things. It will get more and more better over time. Even the thing that humans still can't do, or it doesn't do this. Sometimes the comments are so sad because you already know what this is all about. This is not about AI, homie. This is about you, your power. You're sitting on a reality that's completely spiritual and you haven't even woke up to it and you're about to get rug pulled just like I did in 2009. Right. The good part about it is that I'm here for you because when I woke up, there was nobody damn near. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of charlatans. They had fake aliens. The Orion crew and Ashtar Command was talking that shit. Yep. There was a bunch of ascended masters supposed to be. You see what I mean? We were supposed to be done already. But then I was the first one to be like, look, they've been believing in this since Mount Shasta. I think that this is a part of the program. And you know about this, right? Like this is what the school that we're from, like you were right there, you know what I mean? So this is
out there for a while now. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the context in which we met on. So what I'm saying in conclusion is it's impossible for me to see the reality the same way that everybody else sees it because I've been in a certain reality for so long that this doesn't look too different for me from what I was already seeing behind the scenes. And also, as on another note, something I was just seeing today, and it was like from the 1990 or something, 1992, a while ago. They were just showing the newspaper. And on the bottom, because they were showing the main ad, but on the bottom I saw it say, 7 people are killed so far by the flesh-eating virus, right? Old newspaper from 1992. Same stuff.
Yep. Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, so what happened? Did we all die of a flesh-eating virus? No. But the media, they had everybody believing in flesh-eating viruses sweeping the land. So this is that same, like, that dynamic. So is either fear a motivator, or is it going to make you capitulate? Is it going to make you to the point where you feel like that there's no hope?
Mm.
And when you cease to believe in yourself anymore, and maybe if you have some accoutrements, some resources, maybe you could start believing in somebody else, right? Like your children or these kids. So we put a lot of time and energy into the next generation. Now that's our promise, right? So this is where we use the old wisdom to teach us how to deal with not new problems, but problems that have been created because we stopped utilizing that ancient wisdom and awareness of what's really going on. And that's, again, if you're dealing with something that's invisible, though, and this is just out of sight, out of mind with people, not realizing that there are still invisible forces here. And those forces are steeped, many of them, in division. I'm not saying that, even when I use the term jinn, this is it's a very derogative term in a way, because to say all jinn are bad is just as silly as saying all the humans are good. But it is just an awareness that there is another intelligent force that sees human beings as servitile. And this is why it's all built into the religious structure. Humans are down here, it's up here. It's a supremacist ideal in those who still maintain that and have not graduated beyond that. And that way of addressing things like, hey, I'm your God and you're my servant, that is the components that keep people stagnant and keep people behind, right? And so, especially if you happen to be, it's just not even that kind of structure, right? So removing the depression, removing the things that are from the top of people's head, allowing a person to see these very powerful innovations like a nuclear weapon. Nuclear power, we power an entire city or we blow it all up. So AI is exactly that same thing. And it appeals, though, more to like coders, okay? And people who are familiar with the technical framework, because a lot of times they perceive that this thing is so complex. There were even things coming from a computer background that I felt were really complex just naturally. It was like interbred things like, well, you can't do that. Oh man, you're going to run into a problem there. And it's just like something just there chattering, telling me that I can't accomplish this because it's too hard. And I'm like, well, let's just see. And then after a while, you start realizing, hey, this is not the same thing. And this is, I guess, to conclude this. See, back in the day, again, being involved in technology so long, we would get these like launches of things like Photoshop. And they would do the commercial, and it was guaranteed in the commercial to take you to another state, according to them, that you were going to be able to produce these images and do stuff that nobody's ever able to do before. But it didn't make the image. And that became the norm, is that everything that came out was like supposed to be so incredible according to how the maker was putting it, but you would still have to like learn this and do it and put it all together. So even the real part of what you wanted to do, you didn't even get to that yet because you needed to learn how to use all the buttons on the side panel first, right?
Starting this level with it first.
Yeah. Exactly. AI is not like that. It starts delivering value right away. And so these kind of things, I believe, can, for a short period of time, because I'm not saying that you could live in a realm that's that disruptive. This thing literally has 3 to 5 years with super intelligence, because you got other nations that will take advantage of this opportunity because they've been sitting under the poverty line for an indefinite period of time. And now, like even, and this is just kind of stuff to see it seeping at the cracks. Like right now, Apple is like restricting its store from India because there's so many apps coming in every single day. They just know they're just going to get flooded with apps because you can build apps with AI now, right? So all those areas are eventually the floodgates are going to, fall. So I say 3 to 5 years, and then you should have that transitional process of you going into what you would see is like bubbles, communities, but the communities they're interlinked, but they're in different places where resources exist. The dirt is the biggest resource. Right. You see what I mean? And again, the inability for a person to be able to do that is now removed because they literally, if they put some intention in, can rebrand their business, can investigate the right kind of stocks and investments, or educate themselves, or finalize that app, or finish that book, or make that movie, or you see what I mean? In a window where people, if it's good, because a good camera doesn't make a cameraman. Just because AI is here, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden everybody is able to use it to its full potential. So this is a good window for people who do adopt it as a way of 10xing, even 20xing their productivity. This is the time, because many of those people have been held back thus far by just not having what an agent is now, like those different intelligent sources that can inform you on how to get to the next stage of what you're developing.
Yes, very well
Yep.
said. Yeah, I'm right here with you. And those resonance centers, or those pods, as you said in the Band of Light, we call them home domes. You know, that's been part of the mythos for 16 years now as well. It's just like,
Yeah, it's like I land here, I stay here.
yeah, exactly. And that
Yeah.
they're interconnected. You know, they're literally spherical realms that each are guardians of certain resources, and developing and resonating with not only the consciousness, but you might say, the only structure I've seen so far that
Mhm.
carries a mirror of what that could be when it comes to
Mm.
broadcast technology, the multi simulcast experiences that we can have. Because I'm an artist, so of course I think and feel things and relate to reality through music and sound and community building through what I do best, right? Just bringing people together, and whether it be for kind of sound healing events or concerts, and if we're gonna activate the booty chakra or just go all the way into shavasana, whatever direction we got to go. But that's
Yeah.
that I gather people, and I love to interact with community. Um, and so I've always thought in terms of, well, wouldn't it be interesting, kind of again, like a little bit of glass bead game, coming back around to the language thing, and how each culture has a different language. In a way, if we were to pop a home dome, these spherical event temples on land, with crop circle concentric rings of all the right devas and plants and medicines around them, and make sure the animal kingdom and all the preservation of the right animals are all represented, and that each of these locations is in a way a repository, kind of an arc of the best of that part of the ecosystem of our shared world. Then you link all them together, so we're having conversations through resonance, unified experiences. We're all at certain moments maybe doing a breath together, maybe singing the same tone together, maybe dancing to the same beat together. What would happen? This was what I was thinking about when I was a kid. Like, what would happen if not only we link together all these puzzle pieces of language, we link together the puzzle pieces of our actual behaviors, and we like got into alignment, in sync, right? We synced up
Mhm.
on the plane.
Mhm.
And so of course, like the first place my mind went is like, well, we need spaces that would be able to not only hold and reflect, but resonate that experience, so it wouldn't, the sound or the prayer or the thought wouldn't just cancel clear out at a right angle, in the space in these buildings that we got going on here. So we'd have to arc the angles again. We got to get curvature going. We got to get these spherical temples online. And then how can we create these resonance centers in a way where they can speak to each other and have conversations as communities, so that,
Mhm.
we got our Costa Rica home dome online. And then
Mhm.
I'm in Hawaii.
The Hawaii home dome.
We
Yeah.
could we could literally introduce the whole Hawaii ohana, like hundreds of people are there, and it's like, hey, and now let's throw it to brother Seven over in the Costa Rica home dome. What's up, Seven? You come online, and it's like full sound, full light of your presentation, and you could
Yeah.
take inside of a cell and check out what Sybil's doing. And so I constantly think about this as the long-term solutionary that I am, because it's what keeps me going. It's what keeps me alive. It's what gives me juice to show up for the day to day with my little girl. And, and of course, conversations like these fall into that category too, of just fanning the flames, so to speak, of why we're here, and remembering that nostalgia from the 80s kid that I am as well. Just like, don't forget that feeling you had, man, when when the ship comes out from behind
Yeah. Don't,
rock. Don't forget that feeling.
yeah. Don't let that burn out.
It's
Yeah. I mean, because, the truth to the matter is that, when we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? The wheel is the yin and the yang in that way. And in those kind of visions, when you pair them with the straight line, they become one in that way. See what I mean? So even in that vision that you have, that's a part of the vision that I have. And then the other part to that is when, let's say, the men and the women wake up in the morning, if you may, and get right into situation room at a certain stage too, right? Like, all right, here's what we're doing. We're feeding here, or we just deployed this. So we have our, see, because these communities, they need to be sustainable, because resources is always becoming the factor, because that's the common denominator within the reality until the actual structure becomes sustainable, which is why the sovereignty key is always there, because it's like, hey, let's get this sustainable. And sustainable doesn't mean depending on this one person who may have this capital. Sustainable is in the design. And in this design, everybody is incorporated in this design, and everybody is contributing what it is. You're literally chosen to be in that space because of that. And so you understand how to fund, and you understand when it's time to get serious and to do what you came here to do. And you feel fully enriched by that. Because I have seen even the one where it's just like, they have all the resources, they've created a wanderlust, as the term is, right? And in the end of the day, it's just almost like they forget about Gaza. You know what I mean? They forget about all of the other things that we have to uphold. It's not, hey, I don't want to think about this negativity. Okay, if you're a neophyte, you don't got to think about negativity and just get yourself together. Great. That's what we need you to do. But I don't need adepts in there ignoring, because they're trying to use manifestation principles, the negativity in the world, because they learned from a book that that's how you do it. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, the whole thing was designed for that compassionate side to be able to kick in and to protect those things that we cherish the most. And so it requires us to, but of course, you can't get too much of that and get that out of balance. And now you're not having fun anymore. It's just like everything's, you're like, who was that on Charlie Brown where the cloud was all over the head all the time? You just got this situation going on versus, being able to really balance out the energy. And so this is all prophetic in itself. Even as we talk about it, you're putting these energies out there, but it's just not that common, like, hey, let's just talk about something that, it's not going to happen. We're speaking this into and from vessels that are more than capable as they make their decisions. See, because the thing is that, like, also, I always feel like that there's these points when I gain maturity because I've made a final decision about something. And it's generally because of me and me observing and finally seeing the result of something. Like, damn, we're really going to have to do this because they're not going to be able to do this. They're not in any position to do this. I'm going to do it. All right, let's do it then. But before then, it would have been like, well, wait a minute, there's going to be others that come and do it. Don't even worry about it. Like, look, man, how are you going to do that? What kind of, do you need more than, so there'll be that going on until you reach that stage and be like, I'm going to do this. And so, because if you're constantly spiraling up, and this is what I was saying earlier, you're going to reach that stage anyway. You're going to reach the stage where something that wasn't possible is now possible. If you're not sitting here trying to think that every single thing is against you. See what I mean? And so I've reached this stage where, I would only dream to, like, the depth. It was originally called the Adept Lexicon, and now I changed it to something that, could really stick, the words of power, right? But this is a 1,000-page book of the rarest terms. This is not just, we're going to tell you what the detritus is and, just all the same thing if you would just read it in Cold Encyclopedia from 1800s to 1900s, whatever. You just get these terms and everything is the pentagram, 5 equal sides, and, just nothing there to really say, wow, I did not know that. And then, like a choose your own adventure, take you to that next thing. See also here, if you want to go further on this journey about knowing more about what you're reading here, right? Even when it came time to format this in the end, 1,000 pages First of all, like even with having, I got models with a million token limits, and so I can literally run a whole book in a prompt. But the reality was is that it was like this was even to change one entry was to change all of the see also pages. Because it's like it says also on page 90. So we changed one entry. Now all those see alsos behind all entries has changed, right? So I was like, yo, this is so I obviously figured out that they use a software called LaTeX to do this. And LaTeX is like an academic software that is used to make academic papers, right? So I had my MCP AI laying on top of LaTeX and then putting together these thousands of entries and finding the relevancies between these entries, right? It's like 2,800 entries. Wow. This is a whole year, 2 years worth of fun. I like to call work fun, you know, this 2, 3, 4, 5 years worth of research and all this for anyone trying to do this in the past. This is also based on the context, impossible based on the content. I get it done in 1 month. I'm wearing the power glove now, baby. So that's what I was saying. So it's like, I'll wait, but I'm not really waiting. You see what I mean? It's like I'm doing stuff to make sure that, hey, one day this is going to be possible for me if nobody doesn't jump in. But I'm also not trying to sit here and keep doing this myself either. You know, I'm like, you know, I'm in Costa Rica, you know, there's, you know, we're on top of a mountain in the jungle, you know, just like you said, I pulled off of I went on the whole, what they call it, the COVID and the, you know, disconnect that everybody had. Like we were already on that. You see what I mean? Like once I made my transformation, automatically everybody wasn't the same. So we've been on this, and that's where we can all benefit from each other. Mm-hmm. People who feel a little late to the game should get with people who were early. You see what I mean? People who feel like there's something that is virtually insurmountable for them or they're afraid of it should get with others that it doesn't bother them. And this is where, that's what I was saying about even the multiracial, multi-braided DNA thing. Like these shamans be doing stuff that I'm like, yo, I'm not in. Like, y'all, like, help me. Like, you see what I mean? They deal with entities. Like there's a role of a shaman to literally sit at gateways where entities that it's like birthing from the womb of creation. And you're seeing serpent-like entities coming out of a hole, and they need to now be brought into their first initiatory process of understanding the next stage of their evolutionary honor, which is several levels underneath us. Do you want that job?
Yeah.
Nah, that's not me. You know what I mean? I'm a spaceship guy. You know what I mean? I'm like, you know, but I'm just saying, it's like, so there's something for everyone to do. And I did bore of the conversations though of trying to, like, it was almost like I was talking to this invisible person, sending them a message out there like, yo, if it's you, I'm here. Look, I'm over here. We can do this. Like, I'm putting it together. And then, you know, after a while, you know, I was always in motion, but I started becoming more and more enabled to be able to do things. For me, again, AI, it just took that to a whole nother level. It's like I could pull stuff out. Like even now, you mentioned Phi Aqua earlier, like I have the only Phi Aquas, right? There's only 3 of them, right? Water programmer, the real deal, right? You know, I should have built it to be like this small rather than to be like that big, and that killed the whole deal to begin with, right? But it was my first venture. But what I'm saying is if I wanted to boot up that project right now, I can go from start to finish, because the reason why it was so tough to get done in the end is because I was trying to get the board programmed, and the engineers that I was running into were looking at this as a money opportunity and wanting to charge me more than a board would really cost, because they were like, yo, this dude, get this done. This looks nice. It looks like they got a lot of money around the project. 15,000. And it's like, damn, that kind of breaks the project. Now, if I really wanted to sit down and put that board together, me and AI, $20.
Yeah.
3 days. You see what I mean? And that's real, versus that sounds like almost like one of those Gary V commercials, like, yo, you get on TikTok, you gonna make millions of dollars, or one of them Tony Robbins, like, yo, just keep, you know, developers. And it sounds like one of those speeches where in the end, it's really just a really powerful pep talk, but there's gonna be a lot of development that still needs to take place. And, you know, maybe things don't go exactly the way they say. AI is more of like, yo, when we doing it tonight? as much
So
as time you have. And so that's why now time is a bigger denominator even for people like me and you. We have the family, we have our visions, the world, and the condition that it's in, the attention that it needs. And as we keep going further, it's like there were solutions that could have worked at a certain point they're not going to work now. Now we need to come in with something even stronger. And so again, the longer that everybody waits to step into their position and their role to form Voltron, the difficulty level goes up a bit, and it takes even more creativity. But I'm ready to meet that challenge.
right here with you. Yeah, it's true. It's like almost like everyone's taking their time, getting all powdered up and getting the cut right, and then
Yeah.
time has gone by. It's like the weather has shifted, and it's like you come out, you're like, oh man, I got to change. This doesn't match the moment anymore, and
Yep.
I feel that it's almost like the acceleration is upon us, and it's been upon us for some time. We're definitely in some kind of self-reflective, toroidal, spherical, mirrored realm where, as you say, often all is self, and there is seemingly a personal reality that's being printed out for us from within, that's reflecting.
That's how it was shown to me. Not so much of how it works as far as the exact mechanics, but basically being shown that when you decide to change your world, we're going to drop you into one that you can, but it's going to happen so fast, you won't even really know it happened. And on top of that, it'll sync so well. Everybody that you remember, it'll be in step.
Yes, the crossfade.
Only if you're a stickler for detail, you will notice certain things that have changed. And those are like what we would now call like Mandela effects. It's like, wait a minute, I know damn well I used to have a cousin named Tony.
That's right.
And now everybody's saying Tony never existed.
Yep.
And then you even start questioning yourself, like, well, maybe I don't know, maybe something's wrong with me. But what I'm saying is that if you're a stickler for detail, you'll notice how these worlds are switched. And and I have there's so much, because I don't, I know sometimes people look at these kind of concepts and they're like, and in reality, what I'm really saying to people is that, listen, this is all malleable. The only thing that you need is a good reason to bend it. And the good reason is being absolutely convinced. And this is why they develop systems like the mathematics, and they develop systems like the tones and the vibrations, the languages, etc., because they're arts that can make you absolutely convinced about the real maxims that create power, because to do this power is only faith. And that's why many can do it without necessarily knowing anything about it. But then there's a point where it doesn't work anymore. And this is what I went through the process of being a natural. Like I could naturally lucid dream as a child. Then there was a stage where I needed to learn what I was even doing, because I just assumed everybody was doing it. There were times where I was so filled with faith, if you may, that I was able to accomplish miracles. Then there was a time where I needed to know exactly that I was building chi and that I was transferring that chi. That also I didn't need to focus too much on what I was trying to do and more on just building enough energy to do it. And that even thinking was using up some of the energy. So I needed to actually know the mechanics of what I was doing, but I was always kind of introduced to it first. And then I even went through phases where I felt like I lost the power, just still in that stage, like, I could do it before. What happened? I must have made God mad. And you realize, like, look, man, you got a long time to go because you're actually God, but this is a whole nother story. And, and you're not ready for it yet. And then, you go down that road, and then also seeing times in the past where, again, you were absolutely sure about something, and then now you don't believe in it at all. And then realizing that pattern and having that pattern always available to make something impossible possible. So you start using these same mechanics. So that's what I said, I'm well structured here. And when I leave, I'll still be with this. And that's what people should understand, is that what you develop and what you build inside of your consciousness will move on with you indefinitely. And so get really familiar with your framework. Get really familiar with how to neutralize forces, not just by over positivity and, again, plausible deniability, which that sometimes morphs into, and just all out, just ignoring some situations, but really get in there and be that friend to yourself, be that partner to yourself, because that was the first marriage. The first marriage is between the spirit inside of our body and the fleshly vessel in which we're in, and they're both sentient. You're not this, because they go too far with it. You're just having you're a spirit having a human experience. It sounds great, but don't neglect for one moment that this physicality is not something equally as it's in balance with your spirit. This is why I say, hey, the spirit looks like the person looks when the spirit is the same demeanor and the appearance of the person, the ghost. But they forget to tell you, we're really talking about the person, the way they acted, though, the feeling that you got when you're around them, the energy that they carry, not the actual shell itself, but what the shell really is, which is the energy that is inside of it. But the shell, and that's why it's easy to look at people and say, look, I could tell, kind of what's going on with this person. You can't be over judgmental. You do need to practice discernment. But there's a lot that you can read from a person by just looking at them and watching them. You know who's gentle and peaceable. You know who's lying. You know who's scheming. You know who's so all those things become developed, as we go on. And so, yeah, I really see, somebody told me something a long time ago, and I knew the person was initiated into some kind of high society. And for a while, or for a moment, at least I believe that they knew more than me. And, I asked him about the mysteries and, what was ultimately discovered. And the only thing that he would lend, he said, well, it was like this. We basically figured out that while we thought that we had discovered all that there was to be discovered here, we realized that we had only discovered this much.
Yes.
And that we had basically only traveled to a few stars when there was an entire cosmos. That was the only real gauge that we could use for how much more there was to still experience. Mm. So for me, I remain pure optimist, spiraling up in surplus because of those kind of awarenesses, is that I realize that I'm actually just really beginning to settle in to who I am. And for me, this is new. I know a lot of times people like to talk about their past lives and things, but they kind of neglect that DNA is really a past life. But it could be your father. It could be your grandfather. This is your first time as this. This is a unique moment. And this is a gift. This is what our mother gave to us. Now, I'm going to make the best of it. They're going to write my name across the sky. Not from an egotistical level of thoughts, but because of actions. And so my heart is with the people who are suffering right now. Yeah, I can, like I remember the other morning, like I was coming out of sleep, but I was shedding tears. In this case, it was for Gaza. It wasn't something I was actually thinking about. It was just like my being said, I need you to hold space. Yeah. I need you, because you can feel like these tears are hot tears. Right. These tears, we're sometimes unaware of the power that we have. You see what I mean? And that's what I was saying. Some beings are really equipped that if they cry, they call the most powerful force. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? If they sing, it could be a song. Don't go to whine about this thing. Some people like it, with no sugar. Some people like it. You see what I mean? But it doesn't always have to be negative. But what I'm just saying, there's some people that they can sing a new world into existence. And at times, though, what is needed, because the family structure is moved, tribal structure is removed, it's just sometimes that infrastructure. And we see that as those broadcasts, those messages, those signals that we've been sending for years and years saying, hey, we out here too. Actually, we're in here.
Yeah, we in here.
And hence the term understand, right? So it's just like, yo, we got this, and however long it takes is however long I'll be here.
Aho, thank you. Thank you. I meet you in that place where my tears or my laughter or my song and my voice represents legions who have no voice, who have no tear ducts, but they come through in those moments. And I also, feel the power of what you're sharing. And there's You know, it's live right now. It's live, and we can tap in, and we can, you know, I think there's some. This is another very interesting and profound hot seat topic right now. Is like the role of technology and social media and the screens to become middlemen, so to speak, in between that raw transmission of just, it's like writing thoughts and prayers on a screen, or waking up and actually just letting tears flow, knees on the earth, wholeness, balance, vibrations sent out to everyone and everything and all of life. And there's something about this kind of for show spirituality, for show compassion, and then the real stuff that's just it's dirty, it's in there, it's raw, it's alive. And it's actually, it's kind of reminds me of, you know, Uncle Gil Scott Heron, right? It's like the revolution will not be televised. There's something about what's unseen and what the pillars of these times, yourself included, um, are really up to and doing with their energy. My prayer is that everyone out there, if you're wondering what to do, just look in your community to those who are being silent, sacred, sovereign, and just applying the knowledge. Because, you know, grandma used to tell me it's like, you know, knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. And I was thinking about, you were sharing something very similar in that regard earlier in the conversation, where, you know, you can have all this amazing knowledge, you can have all the right words to say, you can put it really beautifully on your Facebook wall, and it could just live there, and 1,000 people can like it because it reads perfectly. But then you got to follow someone around in life to actually feel and understand and understand, and watch the behaviors, watch the ripple effects of those behaviors, you know, watch the way that children light up when they're around them or not, you know, watch the way that, does nature bend and bow to their presence when they come into the space, or is it like, ooh, things flying away, you know, like, so
Yeah.
to watch the ripple effects of, and to in a way um see with those eyes, you know, in these times, I think is so important, because what you're speaking to is, you know, a visceral somatic experience that you had, and I've been having many of those myself. So it's just, I'm just resonating with you here. I feel it too. And there's, I think, a lot of pressure when you become a voice, when you become a, you know, a figure of any kind on it, on a stage or a platform. Now everyone's got a platform, so it's not it,
Yeah.
it's even different
Yeah.
now than
I mean, you know, they even they call them way showers. You
yes,
know, that's but it's a mantle.
yes, yes,
Like this is not something that I wanted to do in that way. It was something that I was told to do by the
right.
same thing that was telling me things that I knew not.
Mm,
And so I wasn't going to be like, no.
right.
And I also have been doing it in my life at certain points. And that's what made me realize, hey, this is your gift. This is your uniqueness.
Mm,
This
mm-hmm.
is the fruit that comes off your tree, is to wear this mantle and go into these states and into these, you know, because this is, you know, you're, it's oscillation, right? So you're going into this different knowledge and this wisdom, and you're learning this, and you know, so I'm getting the most of life in that way. You know, there's never a dull moment in that way, right? I mean, I'm that kind of person, and that's why I was saying, not everybody goes through that kind of experience either, and it doesn't mean that somehow they're missing something either, right? Because there's archetypes,
Right.
right? And there's so much about all of this that is a journey, and it may not be a one-time go for everybody. So I try to, like, the things that can be generalized, I definitely love to bring in those maxims. But there's a very unique aspect also to what's happening here for each Ving, because there's weights, measures. We were raised even in different places. And, you know, there's a lot also that we have to respect about, you know, it's hard to tell if a person's even going up or down because you don't know where they were at before. You see what I mean? So I just try to keep pushing that energy that is really like a total harmonic,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And again, it's meeting a person where they're at. And I'm not that guy that's just going to tell you about all the things that you're doing wrong, because you can't just do completely wrong. You have to somehow be doing something else that's keeping you alive. That your uniqueness is just as aware of as your fingerprint, is what I'm saying. And so I know one thing though is that the more we take it as our responsibility and we feel that energy welling up inside of ourselves to make transformations and changes inside this world, the more we're enabled and empowered. And the level of odds in which have been defeated by myself to get to the stage that I'm at right now, it's a sheer testament in itself that the great work, if you may, can be performed on anyone. It can make a cripple climb trees. But there was something present. I wanted it with all my heart, with all my soul, and all my might. And I was brought low in a situation in life to where I could activate that part of myself and not have all those mirrors of thickness that was having me standing beside myself. But I will say also, even with the social medias and the booties and all this stuff, this too shall pass. Because humanity has shown that it's successively anything that it obsesses over, it wants the exact opposite to that once it runs its complete course. That's how yin and yang works. And so this artificial intelligence is only setting the world up for never wanting to see a computer again, only wanting to see natural music, only wanting to see something drawn by hand, only wanting to see, and you got to be always aware of that. And you always have to be just there, like with a smile on your face, like my children, you know what I mean? Like they're going to do this so much because, I like to be silly with this. I think if you can't have fun, then, you've lost the point. You've lost the plot. But again, now there's this whole thing with the beauty and the women's figures and all this kind of stuff. And that's just like big right now, especially with the plastic surgeries and this kind of thing. But now, let's say if we're talking value, the value of the natural woman has went up 5x. That same woman is like, she's 5x now. And it's continuing to go up because people are now like, okay, I've had enough of that. You see what I mean? And then now, the biggest trenders become the ones who recover from that. Oh, I decided not to do that anymore. I took my surgeries out you see what I mean? But still, what we're saying is, hey, but behind that framework, while you're making all those changes, is it really you? Have you got to you yet? And see, the thing is that I could identify in my life, especially my 20s, teens, my maturing processes, where I was always standing beside myself. I didn't really kind of know how to interact with people and how to communicate and how to get things that I desired to have in my life. Because I was always like, every situation was so visceral to me. I felt nervous in situations that I tried to take immediate control over and decide what I was going to do about it or try to turn or guide my path in life. There was so much influence. See what I mean? And so when I left, especially the United States, and I came to Costa Rica, well, the transformation, it shattered that in those external influences. I was really able to begin the process. So the thing is that some see it as like, hey, once you have that breakthrough, then it's all gone. It's like, no, it just begins. Yeah, now you have even something that you're able to kind of cast a parody. It's like, yo, my old self and me now, but they're still now like, now that I've become me, now I have to develop me. You see what I mean? Me didn't come just completely developed. And so that's, again, a wondrous thing to be in because it buoys you in existence. Like when you're going through different things and stuff is going to come, every day is the best day. Sometimes the moon just is shining in a crazy way, or the sun, or the cosmos, or something that you may not even really know about that's changing your temperament and your energy, and you're just not feeling it, right? So those days are going to come. But in a whole, I'm always able to move back on myself. And that's what I'm saying, the best conversation, best relationship is still with yourself. And that's what I gained, and even in my awakening, because I spent so much time like a monk just by myself after that awakening period. I had removed all things in between me and self as totality, God. So there was nothing in between me and God, if you may. If that process doesn't happen properly, this is kind of like a hermetic training thing. There's often people have things stuck in between them and all there is, or their source. It could be family, it could be mom, it could be dad, it could be kids. For me, nothing's in between that. Like family, mom, for me to be there for family, mom, dad, and kids, there can be nothing in between that because they will be used
Mm-hmm.
to short circuit me because of the level of power and the mission that I'm on. And I'm fully aware of this. So I try to explain that. I think my family and everybody gets it, just because I move like that. There's no, it's natural for me to do that. But again, it allows me to stand on something that is truly firm, because I do notice that until a person does get to a certain stage, and even I may have some instabilities from time to time, relying upon them on a consistent 24/7 basis is unrealistic. It's not realistic. You see what I mean? But some people allow themselves to do it because they want to hold you under things that they can't even do. You know what I mean? But in the reality, it's like it's not even realistic at all. So if you're designing your own framework, it'd be the worst thing to do. So for me, I only put that stable there. And I have a full dialogue going on here. Like I get at 3 o'clock in the morning, like my brain be in a conversation with something and I'm not even completely awake. Like, yo, y'all started the conversation without me. What's going on? So it's a whole party going on in here, right? It's like a beautiful mind, very balanced though, no real wild, crazy schizophrenic stuff. But I'm in love with myself in that way. But I will still say that I still have to remind myself from time to time the flux, because energy is energy. So all this stuff happening in the world and all that's just moving around. So that flux will hit and be like, yo, it's just like you just be like I said, just not my day to day. But I can move back in on myself and say, hey, you know what? Let's move out of that vibration and let's move out of that frequency, but still allow it to have its place, right? And that's what I believe again is the managing the whole kingdom. So I visit every part of the kingdom, all the organs, and see how everybody's doing. Can the king do anything? What can we do more for you, spleen? I see you kind of struggling over there. It's like, there's parts of the body they got demands. And like, yo, you haven't, ever since, you forgot about us. I kind of look at the body lore like that. And I even recognize it as that sometimes, especially even on journeys, is certain parts of the bodies being in themselves attachments, just in agreement. Like they talk about the agreement of the angels and the Haman, just each part agreeing on, yo, okay, I'll be the hand, I'll be the eye, and y'all be the ear, and then everybody's in agreement with it. We're gonna do this thing, right? Yeah, we're gonna do this thing. All right, let there be life. And then now feet's like, yo, I'm tired of taking y'all everywhere. You know what I mean? So you get different parts of the hand, and to me, this is in relationships. Yeah, it's not balanced anymore. You know what I mean? So I try to use the same blueprint to move in on all aspects of self and just be like, yeah, always, still being able to take, I said, as I call it, the throne, like being able to take that arbitrary component and be like, children, come on, stop it. You know what I mean? You got the material existence too crazy right now. Look, we're going to turn this off. And then we're going to come back and we'll see how this thing is tomorrow. Like sometimes I'll get up and I'll think that, back in the day, I used to think something was going to happen. I see all these like premonitions and things like that. Then I get to the end of the day and nothing would happen. I'd be like, man, what was all that about? So just doing that maintenance on yourself until, you come out completely whole, right? So yeah, man, I'm totally in love with it. Like this is to me the greatest thing, being able to share the wisdom of the greatest value that I have discovered here on earth, and also being able to share the time and the space with people and beings that I know can appreciate that, right? And that drives me to continue to go get more. Like every day, every other Sunday, I teach, so it always encourages me. I'm always coming up with something new. I'm not like a guy that's going to keep reciting things. So I'm always like in a discovery. And I realize that I'm forever locked into new revelations and discovery because I've chosen to teach new revelations and discovery. So this is a way of realizing sometimes it's better to give than to receive. And when you can get locked into that, and that's why I want to give the world more of that. I want to give the world more of the getting the goons, if you may, off their back. Like some of this stuff that we're seeing going on is shocking the world. It's damaging the world. Like people they weren't even prepared for this kind of thing. So, intervention is always necessary. So I'm not giving up on that. And again, I'm over here retooling to be able to stand in on a higher level of addressing the situation, because right now, and I guess we can kind of maybe begin to conclude here, but the reality is that people have felt like that they have rights to demand how things should be. And in many ways, that has been a facade in the system that we're actually in. They were more of working with ideas that if they allow people to realize the level of a yoke that they've placed on the society, that society wouldn't perform to the level in which it needed it to perform. But now that people have feel like, okay, well, what about my rights? They're realizing rapidly that those rights don't really exist in that way. Like they're just as paper as all of the legal systems and legalese and structures that they put together in their fake matrix, right? So in this way, they expect something to happen that this, especially this current regime, is more of like, oh man, you don't know. No, and now what? And this is where people are kind of at. This is society. It's like the system is saying not only no, but now what are you going to do? And then people are feeling like, damn, I can't really do anything because I mean they got an army. You know what I mean? And what about the legal thing? Well, they got all the judges on their side. And what about the political thing? Well, they're in secret societies. Well, what about this? But all the stuff that we were like, yo, this is not, I think we should pay attention to this, guys. Like, this is but still, there's a window open. This is the time to move. Like, we still have functional systems but there should be a move towards sovereignty, get sustainable. You know what I mean? We just, we put an array out here. We have solar panels. We pull rainwater, especially this time of year. It's total rain. We've got a well. Get some land. You know what I mean? These kind of things they're pushing spiritual sovereignty is first, but these kind of things, they keep encouraging you to go in the right direction to be able to reestablish that foundation that you need to have for your family and who's coming after this, right? But it is a word to the wise that a lot of the expectations that people have had from these societies, like they have to do this for us. I would kind of chill on that. Stop bothering them for a moment because they could get really wacky because it's a system they put together anyway, right? So they could choose to snatch it off at any point anyway. Not saying it's going to operate like that, but you feel where I'm coming from. It's like you can't be in this stage like, yo, reparations, y'all better give me back. And they are in their mind like, we don't have to do anything for you. It could get a lot worse. Take the opportunity now while you got fiat running around, fake matrix money, monopoly money. Some people can know how to make it. You know what I mean? Start, cashing in. Some of these people have gone million X on their last crypto. They got their stuff still sitting over there playing like they're rich and they haven't bought land and, bought food and, snap out of that kind of facade and just start actualizing, these forces that are so fake. If they disappear, we can't even say that, hey, it wasn't fake in the first place, And so, yeah, I guess, I don't know how that really rolled out as far as an awareness, but it's just, again, I see a lot of people that think that the society owes them something and they have no clue how nasty society is. They're only, the rulers of the society are, they're only getting now hints and it's nasty. And it got that way really fast, but it was always like that. And sometimes the only people that were upholding it were people that were in secret societies playing on the opposite side for a while. Like, yo, he's a protection. Like, that's why I say, hey, Democrat, Republican, we're always the same thing.
With all those systems, because there's always, those light beings, so to speak, within all of the systems that have been actually guarding and protecting humanity.
That too. Like, I mean, not everybody's on some deep diabolical mission, right? Like, I like to listen to David, I think it's David Sachs, but there's a lot of, very powerful people that are really high up there that they've even been warning about these kind of things occurring. But the system and the structure was designed by beings that knew what the purpose of the system and the structure was to begin with. And so I'm just saying on that level, they never allowed themselves to be outnumbered in a way where when they get to points like this and it's time to make a vote to make big decisions that change the lives of people, and you see those votes swing in directions that seem almost impossible, like why would we vote for that? You're realizing now why there are secret societies and why there are people that are inside these systems running and orchestrating things in the background for moments like this. But this creates a natural progression for also those who are looking toward their next stage because it's sovereignty. Go somewhere where they will welcome you. Find your gift now, leave the job. Let AI have the job. And now you go do what you're really designed to do. But don't be sitting there like, yo, y'all deserve, and if AI come, y'all better put me on UBI, and just in some weird, like, the Matrix ain't what the Matrix really is, because I think that, you could find yourself a little disappointed, so it's just a wholesome warning to not poking the bear until you have your shit together.
Thank you for that. I think that's a great place to land. I do want to honor your time and both of our time. It's been an amazing conversation, but I do want to just say, I think a lot about Interstellar, and that tesseract that he goes to, where he's kind of interacting with all the moments of him with his little girl, and he finds out
Yeah.
his own guide. And you were speaking about that earlier on too, where you've kind of been beside yourself, walking beside yourself. And I've always had this sensation of, I guess there's been transitions of like belief systems, how they shift and change as we grow more wisdom, more knowledge. But there's always been a sensation of guardian angels, guides, if you will, right? Higher self as present. But before I even could relate to it as higher self, it seemed that it was something outside. There was outside forces, angels, guides, guardians that were there to kind of, this is one of those moments like we're all showing up for you, Elijah. Nah, don't go that way. Right, yeah, stay here, And just there's those moments in life that have been key to maintaining the navigation toward wholeness and bypassing, if you will, journeys that aren't that would have led to other learnings that weren't necessary at the time. So I've come to understand that most of the time, if not all, those were versions of self that were showing up from future points of reference to ensure that some pathway was, you might say, the golden path was secured, and that the timeline was stabilized. And I've had this sensation of, well, are there even angels or anything else outside of self when it comes to my self-reflective hologram? Or am I really my own guide through this whole thing? It's like, if I'm reaching out and there's a hand, is it really just going to be my hand every time? Or is there, so the reason I'm speaking like this is because I want to share and maybe just ask one last question, which is, if there was a transmission for the future ones, if you could speak directly to the children of tomorrow, to those guardians of the realm that are yet to come, and maybe they're future versions of self, maybe they're just our children's children's children, what wisdom would you leave for them if this was the moment and this time capsule was about to just be sealed in a crystal sphere, and it would be opened in, like 3,000 years, and they'd kind of like crack this one open,
Yeah.
what would you leave for them?
Wow, that's a pretty deep question. I can only address many of the things that you're saying because in our terminology, like very specifically, angels are the crossing points of the opposing forces, and there you find life.
Yes.
And in that respect, angels are more like coordinates of being able to dial in specific energies to do specific things, which is, again, angelology confirms this, but it kind of brings more of a humanoid or winged creature concept to it. Only now are people and occultists starting to understand the structure, the commanding of the matrix, if you may, and how that's done through the horizontal and vertical points, which are really in themselves laying on primes. So meaning that the way the sky and everything is positioned and how stuff works is that the dualistic forces, when crossing each other, create. And if you know all those points of creation, you would be able to read through the vibrations of the varying life forms, if you may. And so in that way, one who is to begin to command angels in that way, this is the next level, right? This is that process of now you have a purpose for this kind of power, right? If I had something that I would really want to make sure is understood, is really about the language. As I said, that there is something far more deeper than just the traditional. We look past it because we're using it. We already learned it. To really know it is to know what it means. And so I would leave certain things that show that. Like I could show how many words are actually related in all languages to show you that there's really only 7 words in it. You see what I mean? And then the purpose of a vowel versus a consonant, and kind of how that even works when you're speaking. How you only can say you need to fill something with a vowel at a certain point. You can't say things too long without adding consonants, especially specific ones. What letters actually do, like how S pluralizes things. When you take little small parts of a word and you add a letter onto it, and how when you roll down the English language and you just add another letter, how it tells you a story about, like if we went to og, we put dog, frog, and we just went all the way down and just added a letter to all those, how we could start understanding a story that is really related to the stars, really related to things that are part of the construct of this matrix. And so without getting into like an entire session again, I would just say for sure that realizing that this reality is malleable, and that even the concepts that we need to learn how to do that is something that we're practicing now, but it is something that we already have within. And how having life teach you yeah, I mean, in this, it's like there's so many things to say. It's like because life has taught me so many things, and it's took me through those things. And I feel like that some of those things I went like clawing my way, like, no, I don't want to go through this. And to only realize that if I'm always looking for the good thing, if you may, then I'm not allowing myself to maintain balance and understand how these things are created in the first place, because I'm not willing to look at this other negative side. Like I'm just always like on this one pole. And I've been really, really deeply practicing balancing yin and yang forces. And to me, that begins with even understanding the difference between the two, because a lot of times people mistake yin for yang and vice versa. And just seeing how these principles that were here for thousands of years, the Asiatics, they call them ancient Asiatics, are so needed to understanding right now. Like this society we're in is like totally imbalanced yang. You know, it's constantly creating, and everything's outside, external penetration, pulsation. You know, everything is like spear, piercing, missile, punctuate, function. You know, so much of this, even speaking and all this, is all like out, 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 out. And then yin is a force that we're almost depleted on. And so if one starts practicing yin principles, like for me, I even hit a cold plunge before I got in here, because that's, you can pull yin out of everywhere. But it's just also realizing how the entire reality is a repository for two forces. So you can always find them anywhere. There's plants that are more yin, you know what I mean? So I just find that the society needs to familiarize itself again with those core principles, and look in your life after understanding those principles and saying, hey, am I really balancing out my yang? Because the capitalism and all of this is all yang, and it's imbalanced yang because there's so much of it, it's not balanced by the yin force. And so when you get imbalanced yang, it's just like you get burnout. Literally, that's what it says in these ancient teachings. And burnout now came to us like, oh, I'm tired of this job, but that's all the job is about. Yang, 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 yang. Everything is external. I got to get this complete. It's got to get done. And then just kind of realizing that that yin principle is like really, you know, this was a big transformation for me, that cultivation, that recharging, you know what I mean? That rest, that not doing anything even, and being able to shift into that mode, you know, realizing the power of the feminine. And, you know, because you got a lot of women that have yang too. You know what I mean? So this is not necessarily a woman male thing, female male thing. It's more of like a vibe and a way of being. And then also in our lives, we have a tendency to attract what we are. So if we're in balance, in balance, then we will tend to attract a mate that is kind of opposite to us, right? And we have to recognize that a lot of times we get further with those kind of people than we do with people that are like us. And the universe is playing its games when it does that. But that's how the universe plays. It needs to put those opposites together And now you're locked into this even battle, arguments going on and all this until maturity comes along and everybody realizes that we're actually on each other's side. And so that's a whole process going through. That's what life really wants to, big thing life wants to teach us. But again, just if I was to congeal this, those yin and yang principles, and to realize that we're living in almost a pure yang society and it's so imbalanced, and imbalanced yang is evil from what you would say it as. And you know, like there are also people who feel like that they're not enough yang. There is some people like that, so I want to acknowledge them, but they feel like they just don't know where that motivation is in life and all that. But these principles, because they again stem into colors, they stem into attitudes, people that you're around, they stem into foods. You can always personally bring yourself into balance with these forces, and they're so powerful. This is why reality has this night and day work of almost keeping humans off of balance from yin and yang, you know, because it's like it's the challenge that awaits us is like get that vibration rod of Hermes and bring balance of the yin and yang to your life, and not overlook things that seem so simple that you're looking for this big giant solution when really you could just do the calculations within your own body, but like look at your activities and say, man, you know what, I'm doing a lot of yang. Like I'm a major creator. I'm deployed like so many things, especially within the last week and or last month or last year. And you know, my whole energy is always like, yo, let's get it going. You know, I'm the life of the party, this kind of thing. And all that's just like one energy. So you got to ask yourself, yo, but what about the other energy? Because a lot of times then if there is something that you haven't really been able to accomplish, it's absolutely because of that. It's like, yo, your yin levels are low and it's hard to get yin right now in such a yang society. Few want to be the absorbing, passive, listening, not bragging kind of force. You see what I mean? So when you look at it for real on the yin and yang just alone, you see some gross imbalances. And for sure, you can account that to being why things are not exactly aligned the way they're supposed to. And then so in trying to get the society to get balance before your balance is a futile mission. So it is better to just kind of shut it down and just be like, look at myself, and then start bringing these elements in your life. And, you know, in conclusion, like they talk about inflammation, like inflammation is like, you know, it's the end pretty much. Like if you're too inflamed all the time, your bones, your joints, especially as you're getting older, this kind of thing, and thinking and all that. For me, I'm like a volcano, like naturally I'm Peter, you know what I mean? So everything about me is hot. So I have to make it a mission to incorporate yin constantly into my diet, if you may, my flow in life. And when I lost that, even for a moment, I lose sight of that, I get grossly imbalanced. And sometimes you don't even notice. So that's just the last thing. If anything in a time capsule, I've had that old yin and yang symbol there. And then that question, are you living in a yin society or a yang society? Keep it balanced, you know?
Thank you. The only thing I'm going to share, not to add to it, but just to reflect and resonate and appreciate everything you just shared there in that time capsule is, you know, there's this teacher a long time ago. His name was Seven Bomar. And I remember listening to one of his, I was on a tour somewhere in Australia between flights, hadn't slept, feeling pretty good about myself, you know, and had a good tour, and thinking back to all the, you know, the audiences. And I just, sometimes I like to just put on my headphones in the airport, just put on some Savan, as I used to say back then, and listen to Savan before I met you. And I was like, I'll just check this one out. You had this whiteboard and you were like, all right, here's what it is, family, tribe. Here's what it is. Everything can be distilled down to these two things, El and Ma. And I remember going so deep with you in that moment because I was in an internal exploration of those forces in my own life. So I was playing with this on stages with audiences and noticing if I turn up my electrical, you know, that thing you're talking about with the yin and yang, that very young, potent, penetrative force, and I just start really turning that light up, it would have effects on fields and groups of people and audiences. And I remember at the time I just come back from Bali Spirit Festival, and I remember playing in front of 5,000 people. And it's not like, oh, big deal for your ego, but it's like, it's more like, what an amazing experience to feel and notice ripple effects of behavioral intelligence and ways that even the notes I was singing would move through people. And notice how the group feel was shift if I got more electric or more magnetic. If I would rest back into magnetism at certain points of the set, after a couple songs of pure electric fire, it's like you gotta chill out. You need a slow dance. You need that sweet,
to recharge here.
that sweet yin space for a minute. And so I noticed those things, and I just want to appreciate you all these years later, because I never told you that. But that one with the whiteboard, and you're like, okay, El and Ma, let's actually take a look at these two forces. That I'm resonating and appreciating with you in the reflection of yin and yang, how much those forces really we can look at in so many ways in our life, but I like to even feel them in the tone of my voice. So when I'm speaking, as you've noticed listening, and as I listen to you, you could feel when you're in an electrical current, because you're jamming, exciting, even the tone of your voice starts rising up because it's electrical.
Yeah.
And then you come to these waveforms where you're like, ooh, I need to cool down and take a breath and get magnetic with my words again. And then everyone's like leaning in. They're like, ooh, what's he going to say next?
Yeah.
Kind of blast them out for a little bit. And then you're like, ooh, wait, no, they're leaning in because you're getting quiet.
Yeah.
And so I love playing with that balance and observing that balance. And you can kind of see in others as well, when they're just running electricity all day long. All they are is thoughts to mouth, and that's it. And it's just electrical current. And you're around them in 5 minutes of talking to them. You're like, I'm pretty quiet now because there's actually no room for any more electrical energy in this room right now. I'm into total magnetism around those people. But I appreciate you, brother. And I just want to complete this conversation by saying wholeness and balanced vibrations from my heart to yours. So much honoring for the electrical magnetic mastery that you have been devoted to, turning yourself into a vessel of a reflection and an exemplary mirror for what's possible. So thank you so much for being that way. I love you, brother.
Giving thanks to you, brother.
That's what
so much. Infinite love.
And until
it's been real.
Wholeness. I will, of course, leave links in the description. You can follow Secret Energy and just get into everything that Seven's about. He's incredible Renaissance man. So I'll leave all those links below. And let's go ahead and close this up in a good way with just some honoring to everybody out there. Thank you so much for listening and riding this wave with us. And to you and your family, brother, and everything you got going on over there. So much love from my heart to yours.
Give thanks. Wholeness.